Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our March 3rd council meeting. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We do have a full council, which is a wonderful thing, and a almost full council room as well. Tonight we have the agenda before us. I have received a couple requested changes. One is Deputy Mayor Spivey is requesting to move up the Wayne Golf Court conversation up just after we deal with the items in the consent agenda. He is not feeling very well this evening, so he'll join us until that point, and we will wish him well in recovery. And then we are adding a conversation at the end of our council session just before or after AB 15025 to discuss an item that's becoming before the legislature regarding fireworks. So we'll hear from our city attorney on that matter. And Joe, you're good with that and prepared? Perfect. Any other changes on the meeting agenda tonight? Councilmember Ray?
I wanted to have an opportunity to talk about page 52 of our council protocol manual, and it's in regards to public comment when people are addressing the council, and so I was hoping to do that before the public comment period and have that discussion.
Page 52. Do you have copies for everybody at all?
I just brought my paper copy that I have. It's not a real long thing to read out loud, so.
We can do that just before the visitors section. I'm fine with that. Page 52. Anything else? Councilmember Sandberg.
I'd like to add 15 minutes to Agenda Bill 15024, which is the approval of the purchase and sale agreement for Lot D.
Okay, so 35 minutes total.
And did you have any questions? Can I ask about the projected agenda as well?
Not yet.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Any other changes then for tonight on the meeting agenda? Anywhere else? Councilmember Evans, Lamb? No, back to you, Councilmember Sandberg, on a projected agenda.
And then I would like to add for an agenda item next week a discussion of Sound City's draft plan for the committee to end homelessness. I sent an email today to Laura, who forwarded it on to you, and at our March Sound Cities meeting, we're going to be discussing the draft plan with the idea of potentially taking action in April, and so I would like to get council direction on that for that meeting, and then also ask that if Sound Cities staff is available to give us a presentation. Oh, sorry, is that better? And then also to ask Sound City staff to give a presentation on the plan. It's kind of lengthy. What you got was a 2-page executive summary, but I think it would be helpful for the council if Sound Cities is available to give us a brief presentation on the plan next week as well.
Okay, and that's what's in the council packet tonight, this one 2-page item?
Yes.
Okay. Certainly fine with adding that to March 10th, which is a study session. Councilmember Evans.
Just to follow up on Councilmember Sandberg's comments, if the staff has a report on this, because I know it affects local agencies are a key part of this, and if there's any kind of a quick overview that they can give of how that would impact us or how that would apply to our budgets or whatever, I'd be interested in knowing that, if that we can have that just staff information at the same time.
Can I just? I agree with Councilmember Evans. When we had the discussion in February, there were some provisions of the draft plan that some cities had concerns with, so it wasn't an entirely non-controversial document. So if our staff would like to take a look at the entire draft plan and give us their impressions, that would be good. I would appreciate that as well.
And Mayor?
Yep.
On the projected agenda, I think we're discussing now.
That's correct.
I don't see on here yet a discussion of the RFA by the council, and just for the public's information, the meeting that was scheduled this week for Thursday night, March 5th, has been canceled. So our next meeting for the RFA is March 18th, I believe, and that is a 19th, March 19th, and that's a public meeting when we're looking to receive public input on the document. I think you all received a draft copy of the report, and I guess at some point I would like that scheduled on our work agenda or our projected agenda sometime in April, so that we can then maybe have had time to hear what the committee recommended and what we as a council think and how we should proceed on that. So maybe at some point the staff can add that to sometime, I guess, during April, if that's possible.
Let's be specific, I guess, on the date, because there's 3 critical members that I need to make sure are here for that meeting. So I'll leave it to the 3 of you to, do we have the 7th, the 14th, or the 21st, that we know that all of you will be present?
Well, and I think it's going to take some time for staff to maybe look at this, get their input too. So the 14th is fine for me, but if that's not enough time for staff, maybe we have to push it back to the 21st.
Are all 3 of you available on that day? Okay, great. So April, the 2nd or 3rd meeting in April. Any other items on the projected agenda?
Mayor,
Deputy Mayor?
just for information, I will not be at next week's meeting. I will be at work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you again for your service. Anything else? No? All right. Moving on. Next on the agenda this evening is actually page 52. Councilmember Rayam.
So over the years, we've looked at the at this section of the protocol manual differently. So I'll just read the one sentence that applies, and this is in regards to public comment. It says, all remarks will be addressed to the council as a body and not to any member thereof. And so what's happened a couple times, and it happened last meeting that we had, an individual got up and said one council member's name reflecting on a story. He was telling a story about something that happened in the past. And he was interrupted and asked to not, do not say one specific council member's name. And we've flopped back and forth on this in the past. And so I just wanted an opportunity for the council to weigh in on, if we say that statement, all remarks will be addressed to the council as a body and not to any member thereof. Is that trying to say that we do not want the public to say, for an example, they could say, Councilmember Rayum was, stole beer out of the store and I saw him do it, kind of thing. Can they get up and say that? Or I think what it's trying to say is that they can't get up here and say, Councilmember Rayum, I saw you steal that beer out of that store. They're supposed to address the full council and say, Council, I have something concerning to tell you. One of your members, they can say whatever name they want, or whoever they're talking about. And so I just for the public, because the guy that got up, I kind of know him. I just met him, and he's a really nice guy, and he was really flustered, and so he just got flustered, and he walked away because he didn't have an opportunity, or he was interrupted. And so I just wanted to check in with everybody and to see what they interpret that to mean, or maybe we can ask the parliamentarian, because that's the other section I saw, is that in the protocol manual that in cases where serious errors, and I think censoring a citizen is a serious error, and procedures are being used or being contemplated, the city attorneys should give advice even when it has not been requested.
So I wasn't here for the interaction you mentioned of last week. I just heard a little bit about it. But in the past, it used to be that folks from the public would not address any individual council member, and I think that would still be the case. You address the body as a whole. I wouldn't say that you're not allowed to mention another council member's name or a specific council member's name. So I think I stand on the same side of how you're interpreting the protocol manual.
Okay, I just wanted to check. And Deputy Mayor was running the meeting, and it's
it was just an interpretation I had in my head, and I apologize to that individual, and I'd be happy to meet with him over coffee and talk about it and apologize. And I know there were some emails that went about that the city attorney addressed, but there was no ill intent or ill will. It was just I was just trying to be I guess I just misinterpreted the rule, and I was just trying to be thoughtful and in keeping with the rules.
So what I think is probably the intention of the protocol manual is it protects all council members from the public potentially coming up and just continuing criticizing you and you and you and you. That's not really the best venue for that to occur. And so it's best just to address a concern to the body of the council on a specific item. And it would make it very awkward just for somebody to sit up here as a captive person and just have a group come up and continue to mention your name because you stole the beer and you stole the beer and how terrible you are. There's other avenues to, address those type of concerns through the city manager or others, I think. But I think I'm interpreting it the same way that you are. It's just address the body and try to keep it respectful comments with the public.
So I just want to make sure the public knew that you can say specific people's names. You just can't point at us and say, you can't, do that or whatever.
Yeah. So, I never do this, but I'll do this tonight. Any other comments on this? No. Okay. So I don't typically do it, but I'll do it tonight. I'll just read in entirety just to make it clear. On our visitor section, we always have on our agenda and some items also on your sign-up sheet on how to address the body. But here's what I'll invite people to do. Visitors have 3 minutes to speak to the council on items that are important to them. During this portion of the meeting, the mayor will invite citizens to talk with the council about topics that are not scheduled for public testimony on tonight's agenda. Please do not hesitate to use this opportunity to share your views with the council. If you're asking a question under visitors, please remember that council may not have the specific information during the meeting to provide a complete reply. So this kind of goes to that. If somebody wanted to come up and ask you a specific question, rather the question should be to the body, and if that specific council member wants to answer, they can. The mayor or presiding officer may choose to ask the city manager to determine the best method to address the citizen's question, which may follow the meeting or may be right when the question is asked. The city manager may refer to the question to staff or suggest that staff research the answer and provide the answer within a certain time frame with a copy to the citizen and the council members. If you have an item for council consideration, to best proceed is to submit in writing prior to the regular scheduled council meeting. Remarks are to be limited to 3 minutes. So, having said that, we do have a few sign-ups this evening.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a point of clarification? Are you planning on taking public comment during the discussion on item AB 15023, which is the Wayne Golf Course?
No, I think this would be an opportunity for people to speak to that. It's not currently scheduled.
I just wanted to make sure that people in the audience knew.
If the question was, we have one item tonight. It's not scheduled for public input or hearing, rather it's not a formal public hearing. That's AB 14023, direction regarding the notice of intent to offer on the front 9 portion of the Wayne Golf Course and Clubhouse area. I'm encouraging folks, if they want to speak to that matter, to speak now during visitor section. So that was the question from Councilmember Lamb. Thank you, sir. So I appreciate that you can't hear. I just ask that there's not questions that are thrown out from the audience tonight. We go to the dais to ask questions as they come up. So maybe our good friend Mike Challenger can jump in if there's a question. So, yeah, thank you, sir. Jumping into the list, I do have the first sign up on the sheet is Julia Lacey. We have your address here. Ms. Lacey, thank you for coming this evening.
So good evening. As Mayor Freed said, my name is Julia Lacey, and I'm a resident of Bothell, and I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the North Shore Schools Foundation. Firstly, I'd like to say I appreciate the work that you do for the community, and recently the Downtown Redevelopment Project, evaluation of Regional Fire Authority, and then coming up the periodic plan and code update. And also I'd like to acknowledge the proclamation that you approved in 2014 naming September North Shore Schools Foundation Month. Really appreciate that. I know we all work together to create a better community, so appreciate that acknowledgement. The North Shore School Foundation builds partnerships and raises funds to promote academic success and excellence for North Shore students. We mobilize community resources in support of public education because we believe that education is a vital factor in a healthy community. Students can be impacted by the Foundation's programs as many as 18 times in their school career in North Shore School District. We have granted thus far over $1 million since the Foundation's inception in 1995. On February 10th, the foundation granted nearly $40,000 to the school district, and I wanted to take a moment to share what exactly that meant for the city of Bothell. Every elementary school in Bothell is affected by funding for new teacher classroom libraries. So they got a collection of multi-leveled reading books for new teachers. Often when you're a new teacher, you don't have the reading materials that you need. So this is really important for them and for the students. National training for district PE teachers, and we also paid for them to go to PE conference. Math Olympiad, which is a club for students of high math skills to be able to go and compete at regional, state, and then hopefully national levels. Career and technical, career and college readiness investment. More specifically in Bothell, there's a sports medicine course at Bothell High School that money was contributed to. And the SAS, the music program, which is our alternative high school in the district. District-wide, it helps teachers pursuing their national board certification and supports homeless and disadvantaged students. So the North Shore School District, the North Shore Schools Foundation strives to be an integral part of the community, and we are hoping that all residents see the benefit from engaged, inspired, and educated youth. I'm here this evening because I wanted to ask, I wanted to take the opportunity to invite you and the city staff to be guests at the upcoming All In for Kids luncheon. I believe a couple council members may have already registered. I'm not positive. But I did give Laura invitations, cards that have an email address that you should all receive. The event is April 7th. This event will highlight many of our magnificent youth and showcase...
What time on April 7th?
Sorry?
What time on April 7th? You said 11:30?
11:30.
Oh.
Some wonderful programs, so a lot of students will be there and hand on invitations. You're welcome to sit at my table. I'd love to have you, but please click on that link and most of the information will be answered. My phone number's there if you have additional questions. So.
Great. Is the public invited to this event as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We've made it a real effort this year to make sure that everyone in the community is invited. Every parent has gotten an email and a phone call. Just wanting to make sure that anyone who believes in investing in kids for our future is welcome to come. So.
That's excellent. So they would find out about it on NorthShoreSchoolsFoundation.org?
Yes, and there's also a link from the North Shore School District website as
Excellent.
well with Foundation. So, and for those in the community that don't know, the Foundation is set up because as a government agency, the district can't collect funds directly. They can't fundraise for themselves. So we're the fundraising arm of the school district. So.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your leadership in that regard. First time I attended a North Shore Schools Foundation luncheon was Karen Foray's many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I miss that woman dearly, as many of us do. She was a great leader in our community.
Yeah.
So
Blessed with some great leaders. It's a great district. So.
Thank you for continuing to carry the torch. Next on our sign-up sheet is Sander Smith, and I have your address for the record. Thank you for joining us, Sandy.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak. I'm just going to read a letter that I sent to each one of you, I believe, this last week, and thank you also for all of your responses. I think that each one of you responded to it, so that is really awesome to be a part of a city that listens to its citizens. So I'll just read this out loud to you. To the Bothell City Council members, I am writing this letter to express my feelings of unhappiness as a longtime resident of Bothell, and also as a business owner in Kenmore for the last 5 years, with the kind of business that the Beehive Espresso drive-thru is. My husband and I, who's here with me tonight, my husband Jay, and my daughter Ava, my youngest, we've been married for nearly 19 years, and we have 4 daughters. Every day for the past 5 years, my husband and I leave our Bothell home and drive to our place of business in Kenmore, and we drive by the Beehive Espresso stand multiple times a day, even on the weekends, and have many times been unwillingly exposed to women dressed in lingerie or tiny bikinis, and I really don't know what they're wearing or not wearing, but I see them sitting inside the windowsill, leaning out so that I can easily see them as I drive by. This window parallels the road. They're either leaning out the window or leaning in the door window, or if you just drive by, you can see straight in the window, and obviously this is a problem for me. This business is right on the edge of a very busy highway. There's nothing to keep Bothell's citizens, myself, from seeing more than we want to see. They are within a stone's throw of this business is the public library, a private daycare for children, a football field, restaurants, and the Bothell Landing Park and walking trails. I believe that this espresso stand and others like it should be treated just like strip clubs or adult entertainment. I should not see this espresso stand when I drive down the street. It should certainly not have windows, and those windows surely should never, ever be open so that folks driving by can see a woman in her underwear. It's preposterous. I believe that my choice has been taken away by this business. I can't tell people that they shouldn't look at women they don't know who are not dressed, and I can't tell people not to visit strip clubs because people make their own choices. But my choice is taken away from me when this business leaves the windows open so that when I drive by, I can easily see things that I have chosen not to see. I believe I have a right to raise my family, my 4 girls, in a safe environment. And it's not a secret that these kinds of businesses attract bad people, and I don't believe this is good for our community. The stand doesn't have any signs to let citizens know that it's not a safe or a family-safe coffee stand. Just a little quick story. A friend of mine told me just recently that she was at the Country Village in Bothell, and her kids, she has 3 kids, and they were tired and hungry. So as she was leaving, she quickly pulled into the espresso stand that's there at Country Village to get some milk and cookies for her kids. And both she and the woman working at the stand were surprised and embarrassed when they saw each other. And so she just gave the woman the drinks and the food, and they just sent her on her way because, I mean, it's embarrassing. So just 2 quick questions. Do you think a citizen should be able to drive on the roads of their community and look out their windows without their morals being accosted? And does this coffee stand and other businesses like it in our community represent the kind of community that we want to build in our city? And I just want to say, obviously, I'm not attacking the business or the people that work there. I just want to be able to drive down the road and not see that.
Yeah, Sandy, I appreciate your heart on this matter, and I'll speak for all 7 of us, but each one of us will. It's very much something that's on each one of our hearts and a concern of ours, and we've discussed ways that this can be addressed. And then, so there's any information on how other cities have addressed it, we're certainly open to hearing it. But like you, I have daughters that I dearly love and want to see respected, and my heart actually, though those women are making those choices, my heart breaks for those women to wonder what it was like growing up with husbands or fathers that didn't teach those women to respect themselves. It's very sad. And, of course, the men that are going there concerned about the decisions as well. So thank you for bringing this matter up. It's definitely an important one to discuss. Councilmember Rayam and then Councilmember Sandberg.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this up. We do get a lot of emails about those 2 coffee stands. I just wanted to let you know that the City of Everett has taken an initiative to shut down latte stands, and so they're, so to speak, taking their turn on over the barrel, if you will, in court to try to address the bikini they call them bikini baristas, but you're right, they wear lingerie, and so we'll see how Everett pans out, and then we'll probably be able to do something after that trial is completed.
That's great.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely share your concern, and other citizens have brought this to our attention, and I would encourage people, citizens, passersby who see that kind of activity to call the police, because that is considered indecent exposure, and that's not allowed. And so we just need to continue the pressure that, I mean, I've heard that there haven't been very many complaints, and that hasn't been my impression. And so we need to complain. When we see that kind of behavior and activity, you need to complain by calling the police department. And then on our part, hopefully join the fight with Everett. And then later this evening, we're also considering adding a discussion about this item to our comprehensive plan, which was a discussion we had last year. And again, just keeping on with the issue and seeing if there's something that can be done.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. In my email to you, I think I suggested that you make a call to our city attorney, if possible, to at least get a little general background on some of the issues we're dealing with and what we can do and what we can't do. So if you get a chance to do that, that's Joe Beck right there, and it'd be a good idea. Just call him and just find some general information about it, because we all agree with you. But as I mentioned, the Constitution has something to say on this too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next on the list is Elisa Anderson. I have your address. Thanks for coming in, Lisa.
All right, thank you for having a public forum where we can raise our concerns. And I'm just really here to add my voice to my friend Sandy Smith and raise this issue. I work for a ministry that helps people be whole in a sexually broken culture. And I think businesses such as Beehive and the one that is at Country Village is the exact opposite of helping people be whole in our culture. And it doesn't represent the family values that I have been a proud resident of Bothell for 13 years, and I have teenage sons as well as daughters, and I mentor young ladies, and the objectification that happens at those bikini baristas is something that not only saddens me for that young lady and her future, but for the men and that downward slope that could lead to for as far as addictions. And we've seen that in the news reports on prostitution rings being managed out of these espresso stands. And so I would love to see zoning that this is adult entertainment, because that truly is what it is, and it is dangerous, the one that is on Bothell Way right there, because I know personally of people who have either gotten in accidents or almost gotten in accidents because of the people looking who are oogling or whatever you want to call it, that are not, who are just in that traffic lineup. So I just would love to see our community take a stand for decency, for morality, to truly be a family-friendly community that I believe we are. We're one of the best places to live in Washington, and let's keep it that way. And I'm concerned because of all the growth that is occurring right now in Bothell that we need to pay attention to that, and I would love to see that be something that is addressed in the as a item of business to be considered for the future growth and development of our community. So thank you for this opportunity to add my voice to it, because I know I'm not alone as a mom and a wife in this community. I know that I speak for a lot of women because I work for a ministry, and we've addressed this on our radio show, and we have had an outpouring, probably more than most of our other topics that we cover on the radio show. So I know this is a heartbeat of a lot of families.
Well, I love what you've done for many years, and my kids, who you know well, have lived underneath the curriculum that teaches them to respect other sexes for who they are and treat them with love, respect, rather than objectation or whatever word.
Objectivity, yeah.
Objectivity. So thank you for dedicating your life, your work life, and who you are to bettering the those around us, I guess. Thank you, Elisa.
Thank you for your service, too.
Next on the sign-up sheet is Rosalind Gorks. I don't know, Roz. I have an opportunity to have you come forward. I'm sitting in the seat here. All right. That's perfectly fine. Thank you. So actually, we do have people signed up before that, so we'll get to Carrie in just a second. Next on the sign-up sheet would be Jesse Sears. Jesse, we do have your address. Great.
Thank you for allowing me to talk tonight. I'm Jesse. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and also the group of One Bothell. I'm very excited about the direction that everything's kind of happening right now, moving forward with One Bothell and the Waynes Golf Course in particular. Is this not on?
It's a little closer.
A little closer? Is that better? Okay. We have an opportunity right now as the citizens of Bothell, but mainly this council has an opportunity right now to be proactive and make something that's very, very special. This area that we have in Bothell is unique. There's no other township around us like this. And in fact, there isn't really any other township like this that has this amount of park systems or opportunity to have this amount of park systems with the urban area around it. If it's done right, we have the opportunity to rival places like Bend as far as inside the city of what they can do here. I see a vision of large, interconnected parks that are connected by trails, that are connected by the river, that are connected by the Burt Gilman. And that is a place that promotes recreation, promotes environmentalism, promotes a beautiful place to live. And I think that that's what Bothell could be. All right? And right now, with what's happening on the front nine, I'm very excited about. I hope that this council comes together and moves forward with stuff. I'd like to see them try to, or see you guys try to put together a extension on the 45 days that are coming up to say that we need some more time to be able to get an appraisal of the property to be able to move forward with some of the funding mechanisms that are coming forward. One Bothell has been working extremely hard, working with the state, working with other environmental groups on this property. And I can't tell you how excited these environmental groups are about this property. We have one thing in particular that's more important than anything, and that's this river that flows through our city. It's the gatekeeper both upstream and downstream for very special species like the coho salmon. And the amount of time and the amount of effort that we can put towards that and protecting the lands along those, I think it's very, very important. And the restoration project could happen with that land. I don't want this council to forget about the back nine. The back nine is still very important to us. It's very important to the environmental groups, and it's very important to the tribes. Everybody that we've spoken to, every group that we've come forward to, has said the same thing, that the front nine and the back nine really go together. And we'd like to see the council put forth as much effort they put forward on the front nine, on the back nine. And I want to make it perfectly clear that One Bothell wants to work with this council and with the city and with everybody possible. And to the players that have the mutual agreement on the back nine, we want to know that One Bothell wants to work with them, wants to sit down at the table and to be able to work something out, to be able to hold that land in perpetuity for the citizens of Bothell. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. Next on the sign-up sheet is Sandy Gwynn. Ms. Gwynn, nice to see you again this evening.
Good evening, Council. It is good to see the Council coming together on issues. And I wholeheartedly agree with the previous speakers on the baristas.
Absolutely. I know that's your heart. Can you, I know that some people would like to be able to hear a little bit. I don't know if...
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine. So thank you for trying to speak a little louder.
I'm going to talk about the Regional Fire Authority. The Regional Fire Authority would cost Bothell citizens collectively $1.50 per thousand assessed valuation. It would mean a new tax, $1 per thousand assessed valuation, both land and structure, will be added to the property tax bill, plus a new 50-cent benefit charge fee. And if I have any of this wrong, please correct me. Benefit charge is a fee and will arrive in the mail, does not show up on the property tax bill. A $1 million home and a $200,000 home will have the same benefit charge fee if they have the same square footage. Structures with larger square footage, such as apartments, senior housing, and office buildings, will pay more due to square footage calculation. Question: when will the City Council discuss refunding to the citizens the money that is currently used to pay for fire services if the RFA passes, specifically the $1 per thousand assessed value? If not, citizens will pay twice for the service they currently receive. 80% of a fire budget, typically is 80%, is personnel cost. I do not have the most current one. It's not on the web. What's on the web currently is the Local 2099 International Association of Firefighters contract that ended in December 31st, 2014. I looked, and these salaries seem to be pretty much in order. It's something that I could pay. Our firefighters deserve a decent salary, but it has got to be a salary that citizens can pay. Councilmember Rahum forwarded to me information that was provided on the current firefighters' salaries. An average firefighter makes $158,289 a year.
You
An
can-
average fire lieutenant,
15 seconds to wrap it up.
$168,782, and a fire battalion chief, the highest is 191, 428,000. That's quite a bit. So I would like a discussion that if we go forward to an RFA, does it mean higher comparables than what this is already?
We agree with you. I think we're all looking forward to the conversation. Thank you, Sandy. Good to see you again. Next person on the sign-up sheet is Jennifer Rouse. I believe that's how I said it. Good. Jennifer, thank you for coming. We have your address already, so.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate I had a chance to send you guys a letter last year, and I have a similar concern to other individuals that are here tonight. I would like to propose a little bit more aggressive stand that the city council can take on the issue of the behavior. So, I am proposing Bothell place the code amendment agenda around adult entertainment as it relates to the bikini barista stands in Bothell, specifically the Paradise Espresso and the Beehive, as high priority on your 2015 docket. In addition, I am proposing a multidisciplinary team to take a proactive stance on investigations into the business activities of these two establishments based on the below evidence. Citizen complaints. I only have evidence from 2012 to 2014, but there's 15 complaints in that time frame. And complaints are from both men and women about the exposure of women in G-strings either inside or outside the booth. The most disturbing report to me personally was in March of 2014, and I'm sorry if there's children in the room, of a caller reporting that she saw a woman laying on the business floor with her hands between her legs playing with herself. This also was a woman who was with her children in the car. The other thing that's important, I think, for council to know is 10 of the complaints that have happened have been after the 2012 prostitution investigation. So this is indicating to me that there's still an ongoing problem, even though there was action taken by the city, which I appreciate very much. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is I do think this is a detriment to public health, safety, and welfare. 2 incidences reported to the police were actually from the baristas themselves who are being violated with indecent exposure, both in July of 2013 and August of 2013. The safety of the workers, we never think about the women in the booth. We think, why are they doing this? But actually the safety of the workers is a huge issue. So they are being... The nature of the business suggests that the customers can get much more than a coffee when they're being served coffee with a G-string. So that's what customers are doing. They're coming and exposing themselves to these baristas. The third thing is that I would like you guys to consider, and I know this is on your hearts, is the criminal investigation that happened in 2012, which I'm sure you're all aware of, where 2 charges of prostitution with video evidence was taken to court, but the owner, per police report and city attorney, have told me that the owner was not found guilty of racketeering because it was found that he didn't have knowledge of the activity that was going on. I also would like to request this stand because there is historical records now of other businesses in our area.
Keep going.
That are having criminal activity with similar establishments. So you talked about the city of Everett, and I had a chance to talk to their code compliance officer. And what has happened, how that started, is lots of complaints from citizens came in, landed on the code compliance officer's desk, and that, with media pressure, landed in the chief deputy's hands, and that's where the investigation happened. And
Jennifer,
that's, yeah.
You're at your end of your 3 minutes, but are you open to a question?
Yes, well, my question is, I would like to...
my question to you.
Okay.
What have you seen other cities do to be successful in this manner? Seems like you're informed on this.
Yes, so they have a special investigation, undercover police officers who go in and are investigating actively rather than not actively, and that included FBI involvement because of underage issues. So I really feel that the city needs to take a strong stand on that and proactively get police officers into investigation mode. And I've heard different reports from the police I talked to some of the police people in charge, and there's different reports about if there's actual funding available for the special investigation unit in the police department.
Yep.
And the other thing I would love to say is having I know Joe Beck has been working on code amendments in the language, and I think that the City of Everett is going to provide that language to help with case law to get some change happening there. I'd love to see tighter codes around what is indecent exposure, because the police officers at this point are saying that a G-string is not indecent exposure.
Thank you. I believe you have another question.
Yes. Well, was there anything else in that letter that you didn't get to, or that statement that you didn't get to?
Yes, just basically the City of Bothell has written amazing codes about adult entertainment, and you're saying that it's a detriment to our public health, safety, and welfare, and that it leads to organized crime and prostitution. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing organized crime and prostitution happening. And I think we're a minority in reporting this. And what happens is people are reporting it, but the person who answers the phone says there's not much we can do about it. So I really feel that there needs to be a more disciplined approach between code compliance, between the city attorney, between a city council member and a police enforcement, to have a team approach to try to really actively move forward and get some movement. Because when I've talked to a lot of these different places, everybody thinks the other organization is doing something. Code compliance thinks police are doing things. Law thinks police. Police think it should be a code compliance. So as an outsider, that's what I'm seeing.
Great, thank you. You might have more questions. Are you finished?
Well, I had a question of city staff, because you did mention that Everett has dedicated funds for active special investigation, special detective work regarding this. And, you know, if that's something that is constraining us, then I would love to hear from our police chief or staff that if we need to have more funding for enforcement and investigation, then I would like that to be brought forward to council for us to consider.
Thank you. Councilmember Lamb.
So thanks so much for coming forward tonight. I serve along with Councilmember Spivey and Councilor Agnew on the Public Safety Committee, and I think this would be a great opportunity for that committee to take a look at this issue in a little bit more detail, because as the city attorney has alluded to, there are a lot of moving parts. I think the city of Everett is moving more rapidly than others, and had a much more a problem that was sort of different in scope and scale in terms of because it's a much larger city than we are. So I'd like to propose, with the consent of council, that our Public Safety Committee take this up at our next meeting, and that we have an opportunity to look at it in detail.
Absolutely. I see a majority of people nodding their heads. Councilmember Sandberg wants to be part of the conversation potentially.
Well, I think it's such an important issue that we could discuss it here as a full council. And when I look at our projected agenda, it's not particularly full. And when we have it as a discussion at full council, it's being recorded. People have the opportunity to attend because it's in the evening. There's notice requirements. It's a little bit more difficult for an individual citizen to attend a subcommittee meeting. And so I would like to see it come back to the full council.
I'd like
Go ahead.
If I might, I appreciate you raising that, Councilmember Sandberg. There's no, I don't have any problem with advertising the public safety. As the speaker alluded to, I think there's some issue in terms of investigations that are going on and the level of police activity that I'm not sure we want to necessarily broadcast on television. I'm not sure we want everybody in our community who might be the target of that police activity to have a complete understanding of what our police are and aren't doing to monitor these activities. So I actually think I absolutely agree with you that I think having a meeting at the full council level would be appropriate. I think it would also be appropriate to have a meeting with our law enforcement, with our legal counsel at the Public Safety Committee, so that we can have a more complete understanding of what activities are going on by law enforcement right now to monitor these establishments in our community without necessarily advertising that fact to the people who run and work at those establishments.
I agree. I'd like to have the conversation as well, but there are some sensitive matters that probably are first discussed at the council level, not the council level, the committee level, and then come back to the council. Councilmember Miriam.
Yeah, I support the committee level discussion, but I would like it to come back to council on a recommendation from the committee. Okay, great. Thank you.
We all agree. It's interesting. We have one of the strictest, if not the most strict, adult entertainment codes in the state of Washington. And one of the things that is very interesting, as I look at my good friend, Deputy Mayor Spivey, one of the things that was put in the adult entertainment was that the entertainers, and I say quotes because that's not true, the adult entertainers actually have to wear a name tag with a picture ID. Just an interesting fact that's part of our adult entertainment code. So you can trust the committee that will be discussing this, who have a heart for their daughters and their wives and their families, and definitely this whole council does as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your heart on this matter. Next person on the sign-up sheet is someone you can speak with great authority in this matter, and that is Carrie Abbott. Nice to see you, Ms. Abbott.
Thank you for letting me speak to the council. I'll keep it to the 3 minutes, but happy to take questions. This is an area that I care about personally and professionally. I run an institute called the Legacy Institute, and we teach on relationships and sexuality. I've been teaching for 25, 26 years. My husband and I have 5 children. I have 4 grandchildren and counting. We live in Kenmore, where we bought property, and down the street from us was a bikini barista stand that was not family-friendly next to one of my favorite shopping places, St. Vincent de Paul. And so I started seeking ways to help. We have friends on the city council there, and I understand some of the reasons that you cannot go after a business that's trying to make money in your city. So I work with the city manager, I work with the sheriff, and we work behind the scenes. And one of the things that we discovered there is that if an individual was willing to report to the police and actually go to court, made a huge difference, and that makes all the difference. So the complaints matter, but they have to be the right kind of complaint to put the right kind of pressure on a business, because you can't take away their income necessarily. We tried a few other things that I won't go into here, but I'm happy to help. That is now a family-friendly coffee stand, at least as much as we can tell. But some of the girls that work at Beehive do show up there once in a while selling coffee at 11 o'clock at night, so you know something else is going on. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that our 5 children went to school in Bothell. We live in Kenmore, and I drive the route past the Beehive all the time. In fact, one day, this is one of those safety issues that I think is important. I was driving, remember Tiles for Less before it got torn down? I was driving right in front of there, and the truck behind me turned and looked at 2 women who were, forgive me, but intentionally shaking their booty to get attention. And the man, being male and normal, saw this and turned and looked and kept looking and rammed into the back of my little Passat and totaled my car. And not only did he do that because he was looking at the wrong thing, it was on that same road, a block away from the Beehive. And I know many men who drive that road and look over and are going to cause an accident, and I'm a walking example of a neck injury. So not only do I care about this topic, but I have been hurt on that very street because some man was doing something he should not do. By the way, he never apologized, which is not masculine, but we'll get past that. So anyway. The other issue here is I've talked to Rob McKenna in the past about the legal aspects, the psychological aspects to your neighborhood. We care about this community. We're all one as far as we're concerned. And there are things that you can look into, but they're a little complex for city council. And so I just want you to know a lot of work is being done behind the scenes, including caring for the women who are working in the barista stands. And one of the issues is human trafficking has come up many times, and it is a gateway to some dangerous activity. And we work with a young gal who worked in a strip club, and she no longer does that now. She takes cupcakes to strip club. It's really sweet, actually. If you ever hear her story, it's just beautiful. But the strip clubs are safer than the coffee stands because they have bouncers who will hurt somebody if they touch their girls, but not at these other places. And there's data to back it up in Rob McKenna's old office. So anyway, thank you for the time, and if I can be of any help, I would be happy to.
Thank you. What have you seen be success, and would you be willing to be a resource for the committee?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate your leadership in this matter, and I know you've dedicated your entire life and impacted an entire nation on this very important matter of true sexuality, if that's the right way to say it. Right?
Sexual integrity, and
sexual integrity
in the community. Thank
Great.
you for all you're doing. And you know how to reach me, or you've got my address, but you probably could get my email because you know people that have it. So
I was actually driving by the Beehive Espresso this weekend, and one of my good friends' vans was there. It wasn't his, meaning he wasn't driving it, but it was his company van. and he owns many of them. And so I let him know what one of his employees was doing, and so it's just utter brazenness, I guess, to drive in there in your company's van.
Actually, I took a picture of a gentleman driving through once just to see what he would do.
Mhm.
And I tried a lot of things. I won't go into all the details, but I just thought, I wonder what happened if a man saw me taking a picture of his license plate.
Mhm.
And he was mortified. But I know up in Everett, they started taking pictures of vans with business names on them and posted them. And that's where you get into, is this okay, is this legal, and what rights do we have? So
Yep.
there's a lot of things that could be done.
Yes.
Who knows? Anyway, thank you
so
so
much. Appreciate you coming this night. That brings me to the end of the sign-up sheets. Is there anybody else who'd like to address council this evening? Mr. Challenger, if you come forward. And then gentleman in the back, I believe James, correct, yes.
Good evening, members of council. Mike Challenger, 21015 9th Avenue Southeast in the north end of this fair city. Just a clarification, there was mention in previous testimony about the coffee stand at Country Village. I would like to clarify that particular coffee stand has got no relationship whatsoever to the management of the Country Village itself, just for point of clarification. What I wanted to briefly talk about was this business with the RFA. I can recall council meetings about 6, 7, 8 years ago where we decided that our own city fire operation was the best bet for us. And now we're going to turn it on its head. And I have a nasty feeling that maybe with some creative accounting, the city government might work out quite well, but the citizens themselves might not fare as well. And I think Sandy Gwynn, my good friend, pointed this out. She had more data at her fingertips than I do, but I get this feeling that we should not make the city finance it look good at the expense of individual citizens and taxpayers. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Challenger. I appreciate it. James, if you come forward, state your full name for the record.
James McNeil, 16314 Valhalla Drive. Here tonight as a citizen of Bothell and a member of One Bothell. I want to say that tomorrow earmarks 2 months that we've been at this fight to try to save the Wayne land for the community of Bothell and the surrounding areas. I'm happy that the council has and the city manager has put forth a funding request from the state legislators. Last week was a pretty whirlwind for me. I was actually down in Olympia for an entire day on the 25th, meeting with senators and House reps and actually the governor himself. So I'm happy to say that everybody who had their ears open and they're interested in helping us as a community and the surrounding communities. I think it's important for us to make sure that we take note that this is not just the front nine issue, this is also a back nine issue. The reason I say that is because for me, it's been an eye-opening education to learn how much of an impact we in the Bothell community have on that river, both people up and down river. So it's important for us to be good stewards of the river itself and make sure that we're protecting the fish and the habitat around it. I will tell you that I'm a big supporter of the North Shore School District. I have twin boys that go to North Shore School, the Morelands Elementary. And it's a big-time education thing, I think, for our kids to learn how to be good stewards of the land itself. And restoration and, restoring the river. And, as a kid, I used to jump in that river and swim. I think it's important for our kids and their kids to be able to do the same thing that we did growing up. So I'm a very big supporter of making sure that we as a community stick together. The things that I heard about the barista stands, I'm enjoying hearing that people are coming forward about issues, and the council is taking those issues seriously and going to make decisions that will affect and impact our community, because I think it is important that not only the Wayne Golf Course, but issues like this come forward to the council and they do hear the people and move the city forward based on what the people want.
Great. Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Yeah. Well, you have one question.
Mr. McNeil, you and the previous speaker talked about the city taking action on the back nine, but it's my understanding from reading the letter from the city manager that there is a binding purchase and sale agreement between the parties on the back nine. How do you think the city can participate in that or influence that? How can we purchase the back nine if there's already a binding purchase and sale agreement?
So purchase and sale agreements are, I mean, as anybody buys a house, there's a purchase and sale agreement. And I won't speak for other developers, but speaking as a project manager developer, there's a price to everything. And most developers won't engage in something that's going to harm a community because it'll be harmful to the project itself. And I think there's enough people, over 1,200 people have taken the petition now. There's 3,000 people that have engaged with us that are saying, hey, we want this as part of our community. But again, I want to go a step further. This is not just about buying an open space, a golf course. This is about doing something for a river. The Sammamish River flows from Lake Washington all the way to Lake Sammamish. There is coho salmon, Chinook salmon, kokanee salmon. They're all in that river. And right now, we have the opportunity in Bothell to do something to make it better. So that, you know, we never know. We might be able to save a whale. I mean, our population of whales went from 2,000 to 80. So it's important that we understand and educate ourselves as well as the youth of what we can do moving forward. It's not just about saving a golf course or a piece of land. It's about much more.
I guess I'm still unclear about what specific. I mean, we're considering a specific action on the front nine. What specific action on the back nine? Like to contact the parties for the city of Bothell to contact the two private parties on the back nine and
yeah, I think it's
offer something better than what's in the purchase and sale agreement, or
I think that the Senator Rosemary McAuliffe had asked, we were in a meeting with her up in Olympia, and she asked for the council, she was speaking to a few council members on the phone, and she asked for them to put forward some information, to write a letter back how they were going to work with One Bothell, and find a way to engage with the owners of the property on both the front and the back nine. Derek Stanford as well asked the same question. How can we engage with them? So it's not a matter of not making them the Richards whole or not trying to find a way to buy. We, the council, the city, everybody, we need to engage with whomever has that contract, whether it's the Richards. If somebody has an option to purchase it, we need to engage with them. But I would implore you that if you have to find the contract. If there is no contract, then the city has the first opportunity to purchase after 1 year. We've been asking for that, and we haven't been able to obtain it.
So, to the city manager, are we able to obtain that contract based on the language in that conservation easement? I guess there is something in there about if there is no offer or purchase and sale agreement on that back nine within a year, then the intent to offer has to go back to the city. And so can we request that the purchase and sale agreement that you reference in your letter to the state legislators? Can we get a copy of that? It seems like we should be able to confirm the conditions of that conservation easement.
Well, I suspect you could always make the request. Whether or not it will be fulfilled or not is another matter.
But wouldn't the city have the right to see that contract to confirm that it had met the requirements of the conservation easement language?
I'd let our city attorney address that, but again, he can make the request. Whether or not it gets fulfilled is entirely another matter.
Thank you, Mr. One second, sir. Please, sorry. Thank you. Anybody?
Well,
we're going to actually discuss this right after visitors section, so maybe we should let other visitors talk, and then we can have more of a dialogue.
So is our agenda item going to be on the discussion about the front nine and the back nine, or just the front nine?
I believe the title is the front nine.
So this question is regards to the back nine. So I guess I would like to see what this purchase and sale agreement is, because that's the only way that the city can be informed in going forward on how to also acquire the back nine along with the front nine.
Do we have right to go ask?
there's nothing in the contract, in the agreements that we have that would give us that authority as a matter of right. As the city manager says, we can always ask, but that's the limit of our authority.
So can we ask?
So can we ask? Can we ask?
I think the city manager has been in conversation with legislators, and we're about to get an update, I believe, on the whole picture of what's been happening for the last couple of weeks.
But we're not asking the legislators. We're asking the two private parties engaged in the purchase and sale agreement for the back nine. So we would have to ask those parties to provide a copy of the purchase and sale agreement.
And or engage in an open dialogue to see if we can find a way to acquire it as a city.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think you can have a conversation with the people. I don't know that. I think the city attorney indicated, just speaking as one, that there's no power in the city to compel private parties to turn over an agreement. There's nothing in the conservation easement that suggests that. There's nothing wrong with asking them, hey, would you be willing to enter into a dialogue about that?
Sure. It just, the only thing it says is that we have, after
I
1 year.
I think that One Bothell has done that, has already reached out to them on the back, if I'm not mistaken, that you've already reached out to them on the back nine.
Oh, yeah, but we're referring to the city reaching out to them on the back nine.
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about the front nine tonight and see if we have the money for the front nine. Let's talk about that tonight, and then we can see if there's opening for a dialogue there.
Okay.
Great. Thank
you.
So, again, at the end of my sign-up sheet, I see somebody waving in a purple sweatshirt. If you would come forward and state your name for the record.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sandy Alto. I live at 19012 90th Place Northeast in Bothell. And I want to thank all of you for getting back to me this week and last week. Tris, I haven't gotten to you yet, and Tom, I haven't gotten to you yet, but I will. So the reason I'm here is because what I would like to hear from every city council member, and I have heard it from Andy, I haven't heard it from anyone else, but this is what I want to hear. I will do everything in my power, everything I can, with all of the enthusiasm I have in my body, to save Wayne Golf Course, all of it, in perpetuity for the city of Bothell with as a recreational corridor and public access. That's what I want to hear from the city council and from every single member.
So we had the opportunity to speak on the phone, I think for at least a half hour, and I felt it was a good, productive conversation. Sandy, right? I missed your name right at the beginning. Perfect. So you know my position, and you've heard. So we can go down to Councilmember Sandberg and let everybody, if they so desire, to have the opportunity.
I didn't get all of it, but I will do everything in my power, and I forget all the middle, to save
Wayne Golf Course, all of Wayne Golf Course.
Wayne Golf Course, front nine and back nine.
All of it.
For
and that 4.4 acres.
As open space in perpetuity. And I think a lot of the comments that I've said thus far support that. I hope they do. And I think getting a copy of that purchase and sale agreement gets us further along, at least in the discussion with the back nine as well.
Thank you, Tris.
Andy Rayum. Swear. You absolutely have my full support. I'll do everything I can. I have been, I feel like, as much as I can, support the full front and back nine acquisition for public use and to restore the area to or actually just to keep them in public possession for perpetuity. Right now we have a situation where the front nine, if it's sold, they could put barbed wire around that conservation easement and say you can't go in there. It goes along with the other piece of the property, so that was a big deal for me. And then the back nine, that would be the missing link. That would have been the missed opportunity. If that one goes away, then all of a sudden there's a gap between Blythe Park, Bothell Landing, and the front nine. So you have my full support.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I, Tom Agnew, will give you my full support to help save the Wayne Golf Course, to give our children and our grandchildren something to run in. I have been supporting the One Bothell. I will continue to support the One Bothell. As I said in a letter that I gave One Bothell, it'd be nice to be able to walk down those trails when we get those trails and look at the beavers and look at the otters. Beavers destroyed my neighbor's maple, but he still kind of likes them. And we can even watch the crows that kind of commute with us every day. When we go home, they go home. There's thousands of them in the mornings on the Wayne Golf Course. I live right across from it. You definitely have my support.
Thank you, Tom. Mayor?
Anybody else?
I'd like to talk, Sandy. I spent I think it was more than a half an hour on the phone with you.
Yeah, you did. I get like.
It was as much my fault as yours.
And you know, Mark, I'm here because I frickin' love Bothell. We know that. And I'm not going anywhere.
And I am here for this. I don't know that I can say it for the same reason, but for the same reason. I think that we've had a functioning golf course in our community since 1931. So we've had a golf course that's open to the public, that the public has been able to use since 1931. And I've confessed that I have a real passion for golf. I love golf. I played Wayne Golf Course many times. I taught my children how to golf on Wayne Golf Course. I have a real passion to keep Wayne open, and I'm not reading from a prescribed script that anyone's given to me. I want Wayne to remain open as a golf course. I want Wayne to be a public golf course that people can access and that people can play golf on. And that's what I'm committed to, and that's what this one council member will be working to see happen.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
You guys want to comment?
Sure. I hate golf.
Nobody hates golf.
I go out there and pay my fees, and then I chase this crazy little white ball all over the place, and I am so frustrated when I'm finished with the game of golf. It's not relaxing to me. I do enjoy it, but it's frustrating. We, too, had quite a lengthy conversation, very good conversation. And what I think I expressed to you is I think I mentioned to you that we have a $10 million bill on the park at Bothell Landing. We have RFA that we're looking at. We have very limited parks in Snohomish County. We have road improvements that we need to do, public safety costs that are going up on us. There's a big picture here.
Transit.
But
go ahead.
And so I think you said tonight you'll do anything you can. If you could write out a check tonight for $10 million, I think we could get this taken care of.
I would. And I need and I and everyone in this room and in the city of Bothell need the time to get that money because I can't do it today.
Well, and I understand that, and I can't do it today either. This city council can't do it today either. And so I certainly want to see that area preserved. If we can preserve all of it, that's great. If we can preserve some of it, I'm for that too. Let's do all we can, but keep in mind there's a big picture here. There's more than just the land at Bothell Landing that we're looking at.
I do, believe me. I love the whole city.
Yeah, at Wayne Golf Course, right. So we're with you. How far we can go and how much we can do and how we can do it is yet to be determined, but we're looking at that.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
Well, I met with you and your husband for well over an hour.
And it was wonderful. I know. Thank you so much, Del. Really, that was fabulous. They're fabulous. Don't forget that.
So, and as in our conversation there, you have my full support. I want Wayne Golf Course to be there, ideally as a golf course. But
and we talked about some ideas, right? We talked about could we swap land?
Well,
lots of ideas.
There's lots of ideas, and I encourage everybody to think outside the box, not only for fun, monies, but just anything. So, as I mentioned before, up here at the dais and in the meeting that I had with you and your husband, that I'm in full support of working to preserve that. It's just like, as Councilmember Evans said, we have limitations on our resources, but that's why I also encourage thinking outside the box. So, and I think all along, everybody up here at this dais has been in support of preserving the golf course. So
thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Sandy, appreciate your time.
I think my time is up.
It absolutely is. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, I've been extremely kind in asking not to have outbursts from the crowd, and I think that's probably pretty fair. So I appreciate the hearing part of it. Don't know what else to say. So thank you, Sandy, for coming up. Appreciate the time that we were able to spend on the phone as well. We're about to get into the conversation on the golf course, so we'll jump into that if there's no further public comment. Okay. So what we will do is most likely hear from our city manager. We've asked him about a week or two. Oh, so sorry. I'm jumping out of order. We do have a consent agenda that we need to address first, city manager, and then we'll jump to you.
I would move the consent agenda, Mr. Mayor.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Lamb, second by Councilmember Agnew. If everybody could place their vote, and I'm missing my little display. You can. Thank you. Everybody can place it, and the clerk can display. Passes unanimously. So now we can jump into, I guess at least 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, we asked the city manager to look into a few different avenues. That included talking to state legislators and others. So I don't know if we want to, if you can take the time to update us on conversations that you had for the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Will do, Mayor, and thank you, and good evening. But first, let me just give a little bit of background just for the council as well as those in the audience. As you all know, on January 28th of this year, we received a letter from the owners of the Wayne Golf Course asking or telling the city that their intent to sell the front 9 portion along with the clubhouse areas. And as required under Section 17 of the conservation easement granted to the city has until March 14th of this year to make a written proposal to purchase the property, if it so chooses. Council, of course, discussed this matter most recently at our last meeting on February 17th, and then you requested this matter to be brought back tonight for discussion. Some of the activities that have occurred since that discussion have been that, one, we have met, several council members and myself met with legislators last week. This is a follow-up meeting to the telephone conversation that was held a few days prior. The city has also submitted a capital request of up to $5 million, requesting state funds for the purpose of purchasing the front 9 and clubhouse areas. I met with Mike McMiniman last week, invited the mayor and Councilmember Lamb to sit in on that meeting. Councilmember Lamb has had some discussions with the representatives of the Richards family, or the Richards themselves, and I will tell you that Mike McMiniman and his corporation are interested in the golf course for the right terms, considering that there's some significant capital investment that they would likely make to the golf course as well as to the clubhouse, restaurant areas. And so they're going to take the next several weeks evaluating some previous discussions that they've held with the Richards, and then promise to get back to us regarding their ability to continue operating that as a McMiniman's, a type of McMiniman's facility with the Richards. What happens or what comes to fruition from those discussions, we don't know yet, but it'll likely take beyond the March 14th date that we've had. But we were all, I think, encouraged by Mike McMiniman's interest in that property. I've also presented to you this evening 2 documents. Both represent different approaches to how council might move forward within the 45-day time frame or the deadline that's coming up on March 14th. One is a basic letter of intent that could be presented to the Richards, and you'll see there are some blanks in that letter of intent. Of course, the most important term would be the purchase price. This is a purchase price that would be predicated on the city completing its due diligence, and due diligence as described in this letter of intent is 365 days for which the city then to obtain or acquire federal, state, or local funding. So a rather lengthy period of time for which the city would try to go and collect funds, but it's also a period of time that would likely be necessary given the price tag associated with this property. I don't know whether or not the property would sell at $5 million or something less or something more. However, I do believe that it'll take a significant period of time in order to collect that type of funding from state, federal, or local agencies. Mm-hmm. The other document is certainly a different approach, but to the extent that there was another party able, willing, and capable to purchase the property or to manage the property as a golf course, it's simply the city assigning its rights to another party. The rights that it has relative to offering a offer to the Richards within the 45-day period or before March 14th of 2015. I present these to you just as way of example. There are certainly some other terms within the LOI that we can discuss, but the key things about the LOI are the purchase price, whatever that might include, and then the period of time of which the city would perform its own financial feasibility, if you will, to try to acquire the necessary funds to support that purchase price. So with that, Mayor, I'll stop and address questions. You may have an opportunity, may have had the opportunity to read the LOI. You can certainly address other questions that you might have with specific terms within the LOI. You've likely have seen many of those terms with other purchase and sale agreements that we have executed over the years.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you. City Manager, I'm a little, on the last one, I was kind of with you in terms of the offer and things like that. On the assignment of rights, is the assignment of rights that it would be to another, like to a state agency or to the county or is it thought, what was the thought behind that, or was it just to kind of present an option for council if they wanted to pursue that?
It was really just an option that the council wanted to pursue, rather than, again, it's just the assignment not of the conservation rights, but of the ability to submit an offer within the 45-day period.
All right. And then I just wanted to elaborate a little bit. When the mayor and I and you met with Mike McMiniman and kind of outlined, said, look, there's a golf course here that we believe, because the family has indicated that they are contemplating putting it up for sale and have given that notice to us, that they may not be interested in continuing for years and years to run that as a golf course. Would you be open to taking a look at that? And he said, yeah, I would. I would go back and do that. I had an opportunity to talk with a representative of the Richards family about that, and they're open, I think, to hearing from McMinimans, and they're open to having that conversation with them about continuing to do that and taking it over in the form of a lease. I think there's a lot of different ways that could work. One of it would simply be an agreement between the two parties where they would come in and take it over. Another would be if we had the ability to get state funding or county funding, that we would acquire that 4-acre parcel and then lease it to another party to run it as a golf course. So I guess it was raised during, what is your judgment, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot on this, but as between asking for an extension of 45 days to kind of allow those talks or other fundraising talks to mature, or in saying, look, we have this window, we need to get in a response absolutely within the 45 days. Let's put in fill in a number here and put in a purchase and sale offer so that we're at least responsive within that period of time.
I think either approach would get you to a conversation with the Richards that may end up in an extension, or it may end up in an agreement that the parties can execute. So I'm not so certain that
you have a strong preference.
I have a strong preference versus one approach, an extension, versus simply submitting an offer, recognizing that offer is subject to acquiring a significant amount of money in order to fulfill the purchase and sale agreement.
Right. And I've had an opportunity to talk. I understand from the conversations with our legislators, as well as I had a good opportunity to talk with Rod Dembowski, who's our King County Council member. And he's extremely supportive of the idea of this acquisition and really positive about it. But I would say that he was like, I need to do some more investigation in terms of what the level of financing that's available in kind of the short term in this. He was like, I don't know that we have the scale of money that would be needed for this, but I want to have a chance to investigate that. And so I guess that would go again to the idea of having an extension on this, because it seems like the amount of money that we have right now, or that potentially could come from the state and from the county, wouldn't be enough to fill up, to purchase the property based on what's on the table right now.
That would be my assumption as well. In fact, I've seen an email that was forwarded to me from Mr. Dombrowski, and a question asked what level of funding might they be able to secure. And I think similar with the state, it's probably something less than $500,000.
Okay.
So if we're talking about a significant multi-million-dollar purchase,
we need more time.
We need more time.
Okay.
We certainly need more resources in order to fulfill that request.
Okay. Thanks. That's all the questions I have for now.
Were you raising your hand or telling Councilmember Ram? Oh, no, I wasn't raising my hand. Okay. Next. Councilmember Evans.
Well, I think Councilmember Lamb covered my questions. I had a question about the extension of the date. Have we officially So, depending on what we do tonight, should we make that a part of our proposal to them, a specific request for extension, or will that come out in the document that we submit to them, or in the discussion?
I think you could do either tonight or anything before the 14th. You can certainly submit a letter of intent as your offer, or you can submit a request for an extension. I think either will likely get you to the conversation that would be revealing about if a deal is, even in the realm of possibilities.
Right. And an extension, is there a reasonable time period for an extension? Or is it just, we know it's going to take potentially a year to look at some funding sources to come forward? So,
well, one scenario, because someone had asked a 45-day extension, I believe I heard. I don't believe you'll know much more in 45 days in terms of funding. You may have a small amount of funding from King County or the state of Washington, but I don't think it'll be significant enough to really inform you about what you might be able to offer and execute within a short period of time. So I really do think it'll take an extended period of time to raise the type of money, and you'll need a commitment from the owners to allow you to raise that money during that time frame. Now, having said that, an extension may be valuable for you to become better informed about the purchase price, to have additional discussions that couldn't be held otherwise with the property owners within that 45-day period. But I'm not so certain you'll learn a great deal in terms of funding expectations within that type of a time frame.
So in the letter of intent here, the LOI, is there there's a blank number here for the price?
Yes.
How do we arrive at that price? Do we have any background on what the price is, or appraisal or anything like that? Or how do we get to that price? Do we know what it's on? Is it on the market for a certain amount? Do we know?
And Councilmember Lamb may be able to offer some information, but I've heard a number of as low as $2 million, but as high as $5 million for that property. So I don't have specific knowledge about what the owner is looking to obtain. The $2 million number was simply a mathematical formula based on the typical lot sale price based on the number of lots that could be built under the current zoning today.
So really what we would look at buying here would be the 4 acres potentially that's under possible rezone?
Well, I think the sale would be for the entire amount, but the value would be based on the 4 acres. We've already effectively purchased the remaining portion of the front 9.
But we'd be buying the 4 acres, but we'd still retain the full 40 acres.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Lamb, did you have a?
No, if you wanted to yield, I could speak to that, but you don't have to.
Sure. No, I'll yield. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
So this is something that is, I think, one of and again, coming back to golf, you hate it, I love it, but I think one of the advantages to having a lease agreement with a proprietor of the golf course is that the owners of the property could be made whole over a much longer period of time. You wouldn't need to come up with a huge lump sum of cash up front to do that. I think you would be able to pay off over some kind of like a lease or a lease-to-own arrangement that I think could be, I think the problem is with this kind of a situation where you're saying, hey, we need to come up with a massive amount of money within 365 days, the fear is that the person on the other side of that is going to say, I don't really like those odds, and I don't really want, you don't have any money right now. Whereas I think with a lease of a proprietor, you could tie up the property and prevent the property from being anything other than a golf course, open to the public for a very, very long period of time for money that might be more in the neighborhood of what we're talking about as being available right now from the state and from the county and partnering at that. So not just because of my passion for golf, but also because I think practically speaking, that kind of a transaction might work better given the resources that appear to be available in the short term for them. That's just my thought. So I don't know I don't know, they haven't indicated like, hey, this is like our top price or bottom price or anything like that. But that was based on my conversation with McMinimans and then a representative of the Richards family.
So are there ongoing discussions with McMinimans now?
Well, the last discussion we held was last week, and they needed a few weeks in order to evaluate their situation and their previous discussions that they've held with the Richards. So I wouldn't expect to hear back from McMinimans prior to the March 14th.
So that's going to take us beyond the March 14th.
Likely, they thought that it would, yes, just given their time frame and what they have in
So I
their
guess
operations.
At a minimum tonight, we need to request an extension with the idea that there may be the possibility of purchase versus a lease or whatever the case may be. Maybe the extension's an easier document right now to request that time and say, here are some things that we're considering. That's why we need this more time. So,
right. The conservation easement gives you the ability to submit an offer prior to the 14th. That offer can be rejected for any reason, just like a request, an extension of that deadline can be rejected for any reason. And you simply need to, relative to the offer, you need to submit that prior to the 14th if you desire to submit an offer.
Right. Well, and I'm just saying if we submit a request for extension prior to the 14th, and here's our reasons why we're doing that, we're looking at potential purchase, we're looking at possible lease, whatever else may come up, at least.
Correct. And that offer may be accepted, it may or may not be acknowledged, and the 14th may pass without any indication of, because again, the conservation easement only gives you the ability to submit an offer by the 14th.
Right. And I think it's important for all of us to be aware that whether it's $2 million or $5 million, somewhere in between, the legislature, I don't believe, is going to come up with that amount of money based on all the other requirements that they've got on them. So, and we currently don't have any money budgeted for that right now. Had our bond issue passed, we had some money in the bond issue for acquisition. That some of that may have been able to go this direction, but that didn't happen. So, I guess I would certainly be, at a minimum, be in favor of requesting an extension with the explanation to them that we are working to try to find an alternative for acquisition of this property. There's strong support from the community for this, and see if they would be willing to give us some additional time there. And I don't know what the correct time is. I would think minimum 90 days to 6 months extension on the deadline at this point.
Okay, Councilmember Sandberg.
Do you know when the legislature is going to conclude its session and decide on the capital budget? So around.
You could repeat what the speaker just said, so the listening audience.
Okay, so a member of the audience said that the legislature will probably convene its session and decide on the capital budget April 17th, mid-April. I got that wrong.
Tris, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We can't have a back and forth because not everybody can hear the recorded meeting.
Okay. Well, City Manager, do you know when the legislature will be making its final decision on the capital budget, since we've made a request to the legislature to include funding for the purchase of this property?
I do believe it's mid-April if they adjourn on time.
Okay. And so then we would have solid information as to whether we had received funding for the project and how much, presumably by mid-April. Is that correct?
I think we'd have a good indication, yes.
Councilmember Sandberg, can I just interrupt you just for a minute because I haven't taken the time? I'm just looking at the exclusive negotiation provision on page 3 that actually gives us 90 days to exclusively negotiate with the Wayne Golf Course owners on the front 9. And
that's if an LOI is executed.
If we sign this LOI tonight, it'll give us 90 days to kind of establish a price tonight, what we're willing to offer, what we would put in escrow deposit. Ultimately, then there's 90 days of exclusive negotiation, meaning nobody else can come in and usurp the agreement. And then from that, I believe there was another 60 days for a mutual acceptance of a purchase and sale agreement for a due diligence period. So that's 5 months altogether.
I was going to say there's additional terms. If you had a chance to read the agreement, I know it's just at your dais this evening, but in terms of closing, you have 3 extensions. I've built in 3 extensions of closings of 90 days each. You'll pay for those at $15,000 a piece, but that's additional time for which you, if, again, the parties would agree, that you could extend closing.
April 26th. So let's add from today 90 days. I think it gets us to April 26th. And it might be good to move forward with this tonight because it does tie our rights to exclusively negotiate on the front 9. So back to you. Thank you for the floor for a second.
So I'm not sure if I caught what you said, but you said establish a price tonight. I mean,
yeah, we have to give
I
them an
imagine
offer.
that the draft that you have before us has an open space for price.
That's right.
And I don't see how we can establish a price tonight. I mean, there has to be an appraisal of the current property value. So could we have an appraisal done before next week's meeting?
No.
To have because I don't know how we could establish a price. It would be possibly picking a number out of the air, and I don't think I'm not sure that we can. Are we allowed to do that? I mean, don't we have to if we're proposing to pay for this property with public funds? There has to be some nexus with what the property is actually worth. So how do you establish a price? How do you fill in this blank?
Well, you fill in the blank by your belief of what the property is worth, and sometimes you're right, it is informed by an appraisal. Appraisals will take at least a minimum of probably 6 weeks in this market. So it's well beyond the March 14th date. Information we do have is we know what the assessed valuation is to the extent that it has any bearing upon the market, likely not. We know how many residential lots can be built on that property, the 4 acres, and we can estimate what a typical lot would cost. We may be able to glean some information from the Richards themselves in terms of what they're looking to establish. But you're right. It is picking a price that you think you'll be successful in obtaining this public asset.
And so, do you know what the assessed valuation is?
I think we have to turn to Public Works. We've looked at that information in the past. I don't have it with me this evening.
Okay, because I think that would be important for us to take a look at, to know.
It's not a price that I would necessarily recommend that you use to establish your value.
I mean, so you said, its current assessed value. We know under its existing, what its current zoning is, approximately how many homes could be built, and so we could use that as an additive factor, or however. I guess I haven't seen any of that information, so I wouldn't be able to make an educated guess to fill in the price blank until we had seen that. And
right, and recognize that this is an offer that you're extending in which you have no money to actually fulfill it.
True. But we have a lot of passion and interest from so many different agencies that
I understand, but I think it's also we need to have a realistic expectation of what those agencies are able to deliver. And I think we've heard from the state, we've heard from the county, and I don't think they're going to come even close to the purchase price that we're ultimately going to have to pay for this property.
Okay.
And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's a realistic observation that we need to be prepared to address. And if we're going to extend an offer, we want to be able to put our best efforts forward to try to obtain and acquire those funds, because that's the expectation level that we're creating with our community. That's the expectation, of course, we'll be creating with the buyer, or with the seller in this case.
So if we asked for an extension, potentially we could ask for that time to better fill in that price blank with an actual appraisal. We would better know from the state legislature or other funding sources if money is available. If we asked for an extension, we could get more information to fill in the blanks. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, I think you'd probably have a better understanding of what a third party would value that site at, and you may have more information about some funds that the state or King County might be able to offer from grant resources.
Okay. And then you mentioned that council members met with legislators after the phone meeting. There was a phone meeting that James McNeil had mentioned at the public hearing, and so I was curious who attended and what was the sentiment of the legislators at that time.
My takeaway was that certainly they were supportive of the request. They asked for the capital funding request, of which we then submitted up to $5 million. But none of them believe that we should have high hopes of, gaining that type of funding from the state legislature. It'd be likely more in the $500,000 or less range.
Okay, and then
those were based on individual conversations that each of the representatives had with our legislators.
Okay, and then there is a mention of this proprietor lease arrangement. So that's like another option that I hadn't heard of previously in relation to possibly McMenamin's interest in operating this as continuing to operate it as a golf course. And would the proprietor lease arrangement apply to not just the front 9, but the 4 acres, so that the McMenamins would agree, or whoever the proprietor would be in this lease arrangement, would they agree to operate the golf course and maintain that 4 acres as clubhouse and parking lot?
I think, at least from my understanding, McMenamin's interest would be to raise capital to make improvements to the clubhouse, restaurant area, run that as a McMenamin's establishment, and then also run and operate the golf course, the front 9 of the golf course.
And would that preclude development on that 4 acres?
Well, outside of the clubhouse and the restaurant, I don't believe they'd be anticipating including any other development.
So I'd love to jump in on the conversation. Mike was very excited about the opportunity. He's looked at the golf course, certainly visited the golf course in the past. His concern was he'd want to pay a lease over a number of years, which is, I can't state the number because he doesn't know the number, but it's a lease payment of, say, $100,000 per year that's generated from the revenue of him running the golf course. The two things that he mentioned was, as the front 9, he would actually want to redo the front 9. And he mentioned a number in the millions to redo it, because apparently they run like a 3-hole golf course down in...
a par 3.
What did I say? 3-hole. Par 3.
Par 3.
And then he said the clubhouse definitely needs to be remodeled, and he just threw out a number that would cost him around $250,000 to $400,000 to remodel it, and then redo the parking lot area. But he has interest, and it could be potentially a good offer. So hopefully that filled in a little of your questions.
Well, I know that the members of One Bothell are interested in preserving the front and the back 9, and they're also when they, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm characterizing this incorrectly, but in preserving the front 9, preserving the front 9 along with the 4 acres that contains the existing clubhouse and parking lot, and to not allow it to develop as proposed in Planning Commission hearings as a 76-unit townhome complex. And so I guess what I'm asking is if McMenamins was interested in this proprietor lease arrangement, they would potentially just be operating the golf course, and then this additional development could still happen in the future?
No, I don't think that's what I don't know what type of expansion they would want to pursue on the clubhouse itself for a restaurant facility, but that would be it. I mean, they're not talking about that plus any other residential development on that site. So again, this is just all very preliminary discussions with McMenamins, but I would anticipate they'd have some capital improvement that they would make to the clubhouse, the restaurant area, and a similar improvement to the golf course itself. But that would be the extent of the development on that 4 acres.
Okay, and I guess is there any information? I mean, if you can provide other information about what the elements of a proprietor lease arrangement would be in general and what they might be in specific, I would appreciate.
Councilmember Sandberg, would you be willing to yield for a moment to address that point?
Okay.
You don't have to. You don't want to. That's okay. You don't have to.
No, I said okay.
The proprietor lease arrangement between that is one that is not executed and is not proposed. What we did on behalf of the city and the citizens who have expressed an interest in preserving the Wayne Golf Course is reach out to somebody that the city already has a business relationship with in the Minnemans family. Mike was interested in the idea, and he said, I'd like to go back and kind of run the numbers and do it. I think that at this point, probably the quickest way to kill that idea is to go back to him and say, hey, I want to get all of your documentation. I want to see what your lease proposal would be, while he's still internally deciding whether they even want to do something like this. He seemed very excited. He seemed very intrigued. But I think it's also important to understand that that would be a private party making a decision to step into this. I also want to clarify one thing, because it's been said that there would be no development if McMenamins were to do that. I think there would be. It's correct to say that they would not have any residential development. There wouldn't be any townhomes or something like that. But in a lot of their things, they do have like a small hotel or an additional restaurant or something like that. I think that is probably in keeping with something that and that might materially affect whether or not they'd be interested in doing it. So I don't want to say that Mike McMenamin said, I have no interest in doing anything beyond just a golf course. He just said, we have other golf courses. This is an intriguing opportunity. It's close to the property that we have in downtown Bothell, and we do other things in other places. In some places we have a small hotel. In other places we have an ancillary bar and restaurant. So I think those are that's important to understand, and it's important to clarify that I don't think I think you're right in the sense that it wouldn't be 74 townhomes, but I don't think McMenamins was saying we're just going to throw like a fresh coat of paint on the clubhouse and call it a day either. I don't think that's accurate. So I just wanted to clarify the record on that, and I'll yield the floor back to you.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I guess, I understand that we're not going to want to ask for a bunch of details and then scare them off. But since this is the first I've heard of it tonight, I mean, just some general information about what a proprietor lease arrangement is, how it might be hypothetically applied in this situation without any consideration that it's going to be McMenamins or whatever. Just some more information so that I can be educated on this option.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Rayam, or yeah, great.
So the first meeting that the city called in, I actually drove down to Olympia with the One Bothell members, and I just was curious, so how did the invitation list go, and who went to that meeting, the second meeting, and why was I not invited?
It was during the AWC event, which all the council members were invited.
Oh, okay, so it was just during the regular AWC, okay. So in discussion with so have we been in discussions with the Richards over the years on purchasing this property?
No.
So the only communication we've ever seen from the owners is the one letter for the back nine and one letter for the front nine that said, we're giving you your opportunity to purchase
or
make an offer.
I've held with them, yes.
Okay. Have we scheduled an appraisal?
No.
Are we?
Not until the council makes its decision on what it would like to do.
Okay. Have we applied for the CFT funding priority with King County? That was something that Councilmember Dembowski was encouraging that we did.
Our staff was looking into the regulations and then preparing the application materials, which I know is coming up soon. And again, the decision on what council does with its action this evening or next week will determine our course.
Okay. So usually, I work for another city, and when somebody buys 50 acres of land or has a purchase and sale agreement to build on that land, they come in and they communicate with the city about what it is they can or cannot do, and try to figure out yield, and try to so they know they're going to make money, or they're at least it's a feasible project. So on the back nine, has anybody come into the city to discuss the development potential of the back nine?
I don't know. I'd have to follow up and check.
I called 3 days last week to the community development department, and I haven't heard anything back.
Okay.
Has that been? Could I ask the community development director if he has an answer to that?
I'm assuming he's still either researching it or hasn't had time to get back to you yet. But
we have had inquiries from a prospective developer on the back nine.
You have or have not?
We have.
Oh, okay. Do you know which ones they are?
So far, it's just speculative, so we're not going to say. There could be any number of people who come in and ask before anything concrete results from that, so no.
How many?
We've had 2, one more recently than the other.
Okay. Thank you. So, I just I've been listening to the conversation, and it seems to me that the vision that I've heard from One Bothell and why this has really gained the momentum it has gotten really isn't just to preserve the front 9 as a golf course. I think the group has had a vision that I've actually glommed onto, and I think it's a great vision, to make it a recreational greenbelt corridor through the center of our city, right next to our downtown revitalization. And so with that kind of comes with, it's just surprising that like, oh, well, let's try to pigeonhole this whole thing into keeping it as a golf course, when in fact that's not at all what the public has been crying out that they would like to see. And so I would like to not even really entertain that option without hearing more from One Bothell. Oh, that was one of my questions. When we did meet with the state legislature, when I was in Olympia with One Bothell, they did ask that the city of Bothell generate a document that explained the relationship between the city and One Bothell. And has that been produced yet?
No. I don't recall that being a request. The request that I heard clearly was they wanted a capital. They wanted more information about the conservation easement and a capital funding request, of which we produced.
Do you guys remember that request? Mayor, you were on the phone.
I was on the phone. What I know was we were trying to set a path to go forward on how we could potentially acquire and get money from the state.
Right.
And I believe that's what we're trying to do tonight with an LOI before us, to see that we don't miss the March 14th date to try to get an offer to them. So I don't know if Councilmember Sandberg didn't sound like she's ready to potentially make an offer tonight. I'd love to hear if you're ready to make an offer tonight. So maybe we could work on that, or if somebody should make a motion on an offer.
Well, I'm not done. I was just trying to get some questions answered. So, I think we should put an offer on it, and I think we should say that we would like to purchase the front and the back 9, and that we would like to engage with them on that. I don't feel comfortable putting a price tag on it. I mean, yeah, it says to give them an offer, but without an appraisal and not one scheduled, and it could take at least another 6 weeks to get one done. I don't know what, I mean, I can make numbers up too, but why would we do that? That doesn't make any sense to me, that we would go throw an offer up in the sky, and whether it's half of what it's worth, if it was half of what it's worth, then they'd ignore us, and then, or it could be twice as much, and they thought they just, the owners of the property feel like they're going to get twice the money, and I'm pretty sure we legally can't do that, no matter how important it is to the public. So, I would like to see a letter sent back to the Richards. I would like to see a letter that included a sincere ask that we purchase this property for the public use, and that we need some time, and if they're willing to work with us, that we will do everything in our power, as well as the state and the county, to get the money together to make them whole, so we could purchase the property. But I'm not comfortable with just filling in the blank with a price tag tonight.
That's an extension request. That's not an offer. Just for clarity purposes.
This thing is not an offer?
No, what you just described was an extension request.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I'd like, an extension request, instead of giving them an offer.
Yes.
Tom?
I think, would be uneasy giving an offer on something that I don't have an assessment on. We just got a letter from Rosemary McCullough. She's a lot more eloquent than I. I'll just read a little bit of what she said. She said that she's very interested in saving Wayne. She hopes that the City of Bothell will work with One Bothell and Fortera for additional funding resources. She hopes that the City of Bothell will work with One Bothell and YWR 8 for additional resources. That they will collaboratively work with the Richardson family to secure the Wayne land. The land could be maintained by the family in exchange for agreed-upon royalty. And finally, work with King County to extend the conservation easement provision, which is scheduled to expire March 14, 2015. Extend the deadline to April 30th, 2015, and that'll allow the passage of the Washington State capital budget. And it'll also allow One Bothell to seek other funding sources. I think we need to get with One Bothell a little bit more than we are right now. I think we can collaboratively work with them and move this forward. I also would like to see us pick up the back nine. I don't know how much leg we got in that fight, though. But I think that's the direction I would like to see the city go into.
Great, thank you, Tom.
Can I go?
Councilmember Lamb.
Do you want to go? Or Bill's gone. You haven't gone.
Deputy Mayor.
Great, thank you. I'm in favor of pursuing something that preserves our rights. I'm prepared to make a motion, but also I've asked the city manager to craft a letter that I'm hoping all of you would support. And it's, in a nutshell, it is basically stating that we're in full support of the capital request that the city manager sent forward to our state legislators and senator. And really, that's what it is. It's saying that we as a council are in full support of that request, and I will make that encouragement to sign on as part of my motion. I think that should be, or I'm prepared to do it separately, but I believe we've all said that we wanted to do something in favor of preserving those properties for public access. I know that there's a big vision for a recreational greenway, but I also heard when One Bothell first came in that they were okay with it staying a golf course. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the people that I talked to individually were okay with it staying as a golf course because it was public access. And so I would love to see a great big recreational corridor, but as a golf course, it is a recreational corridor as well as the recreation that can occur on the water through the use of the river. So I believe everybody's had a chance to speak on this, and again, I'm in full support, and I would like to make a motion that we try to secure an extension before our next meeting, giving us our next meeting to take another action if need be, and that extension would be 90 days after the legislative session. And we could go with the projected end of the session, that way, so it's a hard date instead of a floating date. But I think that gives us time to do some due diligence and move forward, as well as to look at other options. Also, as part of my motion, I would ask you all to support this letter by signing on to show our support for the capital funding request to the state.
I'll second that motion.
Councilmember Evans.
So if I understand your motion, you're asking that a letter be sent to the Richards tomorrow, as soon as possible, asking them for an extension of 90 days after the conclusion of the legislative session, and that we would like an answer back from them before our next meeting, which would be March 10th. Is that correct?
Yeah. That way, it gives us our March 10th meeting to make an offer, or take another course of action. But being as this is we've got this meeting and next meeting before the 14th, and so I'm thinking we can see what the projected end of the legislative session is, go 90 days after that, and that puts us into June or July. And I think that's a fair time period for us to be able to do our due diligence and work with the other groups to at least show we're working and gathering money. And so.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ram.
So I like that motion, but I just want to make an amendment to it. I'd like to make an amending motion that we include in the letter to the Richards that we would be willing and interested in engaging in discussions with them on the back nine as well.
Okay. You want to speak to that?
I just think the back nine's a really important part of the discussion with the Richards, and it would be nice to have some clarity about the purchase and sale agreement that's in place. And really, probably the only place we're going to get that apparently is through the buyer or sellers, the Richards. So I just think that's important. And I do think the full vision. I'm really caught up on this vision of what we could do with this land, and I think having the back nine not part of the conversation or just letting that die now is really a missed opportunity. I think we could really create a very beautiful situation with the back nine at Blythe Park and Bothell Landing all interconnected. So
I would make an amending motion to the amendment, if that's permissible. I would support the amendment.
Can he do that?
Yeah.
Why don't you have a conversation and find out what you're...
Yeah, so the amendment that I would make is the Richards family has indicated that they're open to that if the agreement falls out of contract. And so it'd simply say we're open in pursuing that conversation with you if it falls out of contract. I think that's respectful of what they've indicated, and I think that's something that we can do it. I think otherwise we risk... Well, I'll speak to my amending motion afterwards, but that's my amending motion if there's a second.
I don't know if you can make an amending motion to an amendment? Yeah?
You can.
I'll second the motion, and I'd like to speak to the amendment.
Okay.
The reason I would support that amendment is I'm fine with looking at the back nine also, but I don't want the back nine, if that is a no-go on their part, I don't want that to affect the front nine. I want to be able to keep those separate if necessary. So that's why I would support the motion to at least we can discuss it, but if that's off the table as far as they're concerned, then we certainly want to keep the discussion open on the front nine, which I think essentially is what the motion does.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments on the amendment to your amendment? Or your
Can you restate the amendment to the amendment?
Yeah, so the amendment would say that we're interested in pursuing a conversation on the front nine when if the Richards fall out of contract, because that's what they've indicated to One Bothell, is that they're open to having that conversation if it falls out of contract.
You mean on the back nine?
Back nine. On the back nine.
So your amendment would only you don't only want to engage in dialogue with the Richards if their agreement falls through with the first.
The Richards have indicated that they're not willing to have a conversation unless it falls out of contract, but that they are willing to have a conversation if it falls out of contract. I think if we send them a communication on both saying, hey, we'd like 90 days, and by the way, we want to buy something that you've told us you can't talk about, I think that's not listening to what the Richards are saying. So the purpose of my amendment is to express an interest in acquiring the back nine, but also to respect what the Richards have already communicated to One Bothell. That's the purpose of my amending motion.
Councilmember Rayam.
So that was going to be my question, was who had this conversation with the Richards? Because the city manager just got up and said he has not had any discussions with the Richards. But so you just said One Bothell has had that communication with the Richards, and they have expressed that they don't.
I have had a communication with a representative of the Richards who communicated in writing to One Bothell that they cannot discuss the purchase and sale agreement unless it falls out of contract. That came directly from the Richards family. So I think if we're going to engage with the Richards family to acquire any part of their land, I think we have to do that in a way that respects them. And I think forcing something on them when they've said we're not willing or able to discuss that is a bad strategy, which is why I'm making the amendment that I'm making.
Yeah, I didn't feel like my amendment actually tried to attack the Richards in any way. I just wanted to.
I didn't say that it. Andy, I didn't say that it did. What I'm saying is that, and you didn't know this, as you just indicated, that they have expressly said we're not willing to discuss it unless it falls out of contract. What I'm doing, because I did know that, is putting into the amendment a way that allows us to move forward with them in a conversation on the terms that they've expressed they're willing to move forward with that conversation.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Any other comments on this amendment to the amendment?
No.
No? If everybody could place their vote in favor of Deputy Mayor's, sorry, Councilmember Lamb's, and seconded by
Evans.
Councilmember Evans, to amend the motion made by Councilmember Rayum. If all could vote in favor or against. Clerk can display. Passes 5-2 with Councilmember Rayum and Agnew in the negative. So the underlying amendment is amended. Any further discussion?
No.
So if we can vote again on
Can you restate the floor, which is Councilmember?
the amendment on the floor is if the back nine falls out of contract, that the conversation could take place between the city and the Richard.
And
That we're interested in having a conversation
we're
with them.
interested-
Yeah, if it falls out of contract on the back, if they fall out of contract, then we're interested in having a conversation about acquiring the back nine.
Okay.
That's what it says.
So if everybody could place their vote, and the clerk can display. It passes unanimously. So now we're back to the underlying motion, which was made by Deputy Mayor Spivey, seconded by Councilmember Lamb. And I've lost because we talked to a few different people. I think almost everybody's had the opportunity. Actually, you made the motion. There was an amendment and then amendment, so 4 council members still haven't had the opportunity to
So it
speak.
was my motion was to extend 90 days beyond.
To request an extension.
Yeah, and request an extension 90 days beyond the legislative session, which we're guessing sometime in mid-April, and requesting that the council members sign on to a letter supporting the capital funding request from the state. And then it was amended to include the back nine if it falls out of contract.
Okay. So actually, in all reality, there's only one council member spoken to the underlying motion, I believe, and that was Councilmember Rayum, who made the motion.
And then just one clarification. I believe you also asked that we respectfully ask for response by our March 10th meeting so that we can take action if needed?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So that's Councilmember Sandberg. So
It was just clarification. It was just a
that's not your. Would you want to speak to the motion that's on the floor?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for making that motion, Deputy Mayor Spivey. I think at this point, our best course is to ask for an extension, still knowing that if there is a negative response by next week, we have some opportunity to take action. Because we can't, I don't feel like we have enough information to fill in the price to make a clear offer tonight. So I think it's a prudent approach. It still leaves the options open for next week, and I think it would improve our case with the legislature if all of us on council showed our support with that letter, with One Bothel's efforts to demonstrate to the state legislature that the city and the community group, One Bothel, has a coordinated vision to purchase that property. So I'm in full support.
Thank you. Councilmember Agnew? Okay. Councilmember Evans or Lamb? It's this letter. Councilmember Evans.
I'll support the motion, or I will be supporting the motion. The question I want to raise, though, if we're back here next week with a no from the Richards people, now we're back to square one of what do we fill in the blank here with. And I would ask that the staff or someone give us some idea of what number to fill in there based on some research or some basis anyway, because we're going to need that next week if, in fact, they don't approve our request. So I just make that request that we have something next week as a number to put in there, and the basis of that number.
Councilmember Lamb.
I support the motion. I think it's a good one. I guess I would just encourage my colleagues as well as the members of the public to work. The Richards families are good people. They've been good corporate citizens in Bothell, and I would love to hear if there's not. The comment was made that people in One Bothell don't want it as a golf course. I don't think I've ever heard anybody in One Bothell say that. I think what I've heard them say is they don't want it to be a golf course with the threat of it being developed in the future. And that was what I understood their position to be. And that as long as it's a golf course where the threat of development, residential development, taken away, that they're comfortable with that. If that's not the case, please contact me after the meeting and let me know. But that's what I've understood the position to be. So I support the motion, and I look forward to it passing.
Okay. So I haven't had the opportunity to speak. I appreciate the motion that was put on the floor by the deputy mayor. I guess I don't see what hurts to put an offer forward. My understanding there's a number of $5 million that's been stated on the front nine. If we don't feel it's worth that, we should have potentially come up with a number that we did, or put an offer in with a contingency that it will be based upon appraised value. What I like about the offer that is before us, there's a 90-day exclusive negotiation period. It allows us time to be able to work on gathering funds for the front nine. At this point, from what we've heard from the legislature, my understanding it was not $500,000, it was around $200,000. From Rod Dabrowski, I sent him an email that asked him, because he's been talking and I've been talking, and I think you've had conversations, when Bothell's had conversations with Rod. And my concern is a lot of people want to say they're in support, but there is a stark reality, and that's called money, what you can actually come up with. So I get nervous also as well to put forward an offer that also creates false hope on the front nine. So it's good to look for money, but I believe we've been doing that for the last couple of weeks, and unless you have a firm purchase and sale agreement or LOI with a target to get to, I don't know that you ever get to that target. We've heard from the Richards, I believe, $5 million for the front nine. If that's what they want, I don't know that they're going to take anything less. But there's 90 days that would be in this LOI that allows us the time to really be in a contractual relationship with them to dig down on the front nine. So I'll vote for it because it sounds like the majority of the council is for it. But I'm wondering if a more concrete action would have taken to take action on the front nine, because if we come back on the 10th, we really will have to make a real offer. So anyway, everybody's had the opportunity to speak. And so if everybody could place the vote for the motions on the floor that was made by Deputy Mayor Spivey, that is a request for a 90-day extension to a right of first offer. Just everybody sign on to the letter of support as written here, and then the amendment to the amendment ultimately on the conversation the back nine falls out. And respectfully ask the Richards to respond potentially even with the price that they would be asking for in a formal manner for the front nine. Everybody place their vote. The clerk can display. Passes unanimously. Thank you all. It is 8:06, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be back to talk about the other items on your agenda. Thank you, everyone. So the Bothell City Council is back in session. Next item on our agenda is AB 14022 to consider adoption of a resolution declaring certain properties surplus and authorizing the sale and such property, Block D, in accordance with the Bothell Municipal Code, Chapter 2.94. Our city manager, Bob So, is with us for this presentation. Bob?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening once again. Actually, AB 15024 is the agenda bill that I'm asking that council authorize me to execute for a purchase and sale agreement for Block D. Prior to doing that, however, a prerequisite is for council to declare property surplus. And if you recall, Back in July of 2009, those of you who are on the council did adopt a resolution that authorized me to market the property. And what we have done as our practice, as when the purchase and sale agreements are completed and ready to be executed, we then take the necessary steps to actually surplus that property. And that is the action before you this evening, simply to surplus what we refer to as Block D, and also shown on the screen overhead. I'd be glad to address any questions that council might have at this time.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions on this matter? Councilmember Lamb?
City Manager, so if you could just help orient folks on this, because it's a little bit confusing as to what's there, at least to my untrained eye. This is at the end of Main Street, is that right?
That's correct. This is the block that would be bordered by the Crossroads, or SR 522, and the new extension of the boulevard, or SR 527. And what you see as a cross street would be the extension of Main Street, which physically does not exist today, but is proposed to exist.
And would this sale help facilitate the construction of that extension?
The AB 15024 certainly would. This is a prerequisite to that.
All right. And are we able to publicly discuss who some of the potential end users would be with this, or is that not appropriate at this time?
We're not able to. In fact, the purchase and sale agreement specifically cites a confidential document that refers to the actual tenant. And this is when we get to the purchase and sale agreement, the main anchor tenant is a specialty grocer, but that is all that we can disclose at this time until closing occurs.
Okay. Thank you very much, City Manager, and thanks for this is a really amazing opportunity for our city, and it's a huge building block for the downtown that's coming to life, and I really appreciate your work on this, and I'm excited to support this motion.
You're welcome. On behalf of all staff, I thank you.
Actually, I failed to open this up for public comment first before we jumped into council questions. So is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this matter? All right, so back to council questions. Councilmember Evans. And this is on 1522.
Well, if there are no other questions,
Councilmember
looks like there are
Sandberg.
questions. Okay.
Just so I'm clear, we're just voting on the resolution declaring the property surplus.
That's right. So adopt the proposed resolution declaring the certain property surplus and authorizing the sale of such property, Block D, in accordance with the Bothell Municipal Code, Chapter 2.94.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. And the clerk display passes unanimously with Deputy Mayor absent and excused. As stated at the prior start of the meeting, Deputy Mayor left during the break because he's not feeling well. So that passes. Next would be, I guess, 415-0224, consider approval of purchase and sale agreement development with Regent Centers Acquisition LLC for Block D.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And this is the far more exciting authorization of the evening. Of course, predicated on the last motion you just took. This is a purchase and sale and development agreement that follows the letter of intent that was executed with Regency last year. The staff report and the purchase and sale agreement and development agreement go into detail about the terms and conditions of the sale and development of the property. But I want to mention a few of the key items within the purchase and sale agreement. First, the purchase price is $2,685,360. plus numerous other infrastructure improvements that we're asking the developer, Regency Centers Acquisition LLC, to make. That rises, when you include all of that together, rises the purchase price to $49 per square foot. The buyer, or Regency, previously deposited $15,000 into an escrow as the negotiation opportunity fee. The development buyer will develop the property as a grocer anchor site, a specialty grocer. Specialty grocers are in the neighborhood of 13 to 14,000 square feet. They include such grocers as PCC, Trader Joe's, Town and Country, a few others, but that's really the sort of the framework of the specialty grocer, or the type of specialty grocers that we could look forward to having on the site, plus other retail, likely another 30,000 square feet of retail, along with the possibility of residential on the site as well. Earnest money, $250,000. will be provided in a promissory note and provided to the city upon waiver of feasibility. Closing, that's dependent on the cleanup, which is likely either late 2015 or in 2016, but no later than June 30th of 2017 is the end date. In terms of key infrastructure, the buyer will be contributing $672,000, $268 for the construction of the multi-way boulevard that will be constructed by the city. That's the sidewalk and access lane phase 1 in the same fashion as the rest of the phase 1 developments have occurred along the boulevard. Construction of the Main Street extension, estimated cost of $448,564 for the frontage, and then $689,000 for the full Main Street property if the property on the adjacent side of the street constructs first. That would raise the purchase price by $204,536. Construction of frontage and half-street improvements for 98th Street from Main Street to State Route 522, estimated cost at $296,240. Construction of sewer, water, and storm utilities at estimated cost at $55,897. And then the stormwater capital facilities charge, estimated cost at $508,605. There's also additional amounts that would be provided to the city when the corner parcel is acquired. You can't see it very well on that black and white image, but in your packet there is a corner parcel that the city is attempting to acquire, and we believe will acquire, of which then we would sell to Regency Centers at a cost of $40 a square foot. In terms of timing, buyer will commit to start construction within 12 months following closing and open within 30 months of closing. No assignment of the development will occur without the city's consent, and the city will purchase the property back or can purchase the property back at the same cost if the construction commencement deadline is not met. And then finally, the purchase and sale agreement and development complies with the Bothell Municipal Code 2.94 regarding our policies and procedures for the disposition of city-owned property. So I support and recommend that the council authorize me to execute the purchase and sale and development agreements with Regency Centers Acquisition, LLC for Block D. And I'd be glad to address any questions that council might have. At your dais were some questions that Councilmember Sandberg provided to me this afternoon, and included in the red are the responses to those questions. I'd be glad to go over those with you also if you haven't had a chance to review them. So thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you very much. I haven't had the chance to review them, so maybe when people are asking questions, I'll jump through. Councilmember Lamb, are you?
Yeah.
Yep, great.
City Manager, thank you for this presentation as well as for your work and for the work of all of our staff to bring this together. I would ask you to just kind of describe in more global terms what this development, how this development fits into our downtown revitalization. I know you mentioned that there is an anchor tenant who will be a specialty grocer, and obviously we can't discuss who that would be, but just kind of at a very high level, give us a sense of how you see this fitting into our downtown and the developments that we've already have and the ones that are in the pipeline as well.
So I think this is a key development for the city. When we had during the recession, we had determined that there were certain blocks that were of key interest to us. This was one of those blocks for development. We also determined that there were certain end users that would be necessary to really stimulate the revitalization of downtown. McMiniman's property was one, the City Hall block was another, and also having a grocer and drugstore were other components that we believed were necessary to support the new downtown, the revitalized downtown that our community had generated. And so this is the one block that we have in our community that fits the area requirements for a specialty grocer, and I think it's very important that it move forward with development. It's a block that also allows us to extend Main Street and then further connect the new development that's occurring on the west side of the boulevard to the historic development that we already have in our community. So, I can't say enough about how important this block is to the downtown revitalization. It's a gateway into the downtown. This block, as well as Block E, F, and G across the street, are going to be really important sort of gateway developments for us as our downtown redevelops.
So as a follow-on to that, and I don't want to hyper-focus on that particular idea of an anchor tenant, but I know there's been a lot of discussion in the community, there's been a lot of information and even some misinformation about a particular specialty grocer coming in. Obviously, none of us on the council can say anything about that. Obviously, you can't say anything about that under the terms of this agreement. But is it okay for us to say if this passes that the anchor tenant is going to be a specialty grocer? Is that acceptable, and that would be, without naming names or without getting afoul of the agreement? Because I think the worst thing we would want to do is to make a bunch of public comments that would harm the underlying agreement and the chance of bringing somebody in.
No, I think the purchase and sale agreement, if it's executed, and I have every belief that it will be, in fact, the buyer has already executed the agreement. It's just simply waiting for council's approval for my signing of the agreement. It does include in the agreement that on the site will be a specialty grocer. We simply can't disclose who that specialty grocer is until closing occurs. And closing is going to be predicated or contingent upon cleanup of the property.
Okay. That is a good answer. Thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Evans.
How will, I mean, we have seen in the past some preliminary designs or concepts of the gateway entry here. In general, will that be along the east property line, I'm assuming, somewhere in that area? Or will there actually be gateway improvements on this piece of property, or will it be within the right-of-way?
I think you're referring to some design renderings that are not in code, but were completed as a staff exercise, some pavilions on both sides of the boulevard. And you'll notice in the agreement that, at least on the purchase and sale agreement, that is really just a placeholder for more discussions to occur between the city and the buyer. Those are very expensive pavilions, estimated at close to $500,000 a piece on each side of the roadway. We believe there may be less expensive treatments that we can do that would still accomplish that same sort of entry gateway feature on both sides of the block. But we need to have more discussions with the buyer, and that would be something that we would modify the development agreement to the extent that both parties agree prior to closing. And remember, this will likely be an extended closing period of 6 months to end date of 2017.
Great. I'm very supportive of this. I think it is a very key parcel in our downtown development, and I can't wait to see it get going. Sooner the better. Thank you.
Councilmember Ray.
So the Horse Creek project is redoing the frontage improvements on 98th Avenue Northeast on both sides of that road and the road. Is that correct?
No, just on the west side of 98th.
Oh, okay. I thought that. So they are going to be doing the frontage improvements on the 98th Avenue Northeast on the their side of the street there. Okay.
Right.
And then, so I guess this just seems a little awkward. The purchase, I fully support it, and good job and everything. So, but it is contingent on purchasing that corner lot.
Yes.
And we do. I think I saw in one of the comments or the questions and the answers and stuff that's moving forward and everything's okay there. It seems like that's not going to trip this up.
Well, the agreement's been negotiated. It's awaiting signature from the owners of the corner parcel. They're asking for additional environmental protections beyond what we had negotiated initially in the letter of intent. And so we've simply presented the agreement after many months of negotiations and repeated negotiations with them, and we're hopeful that I can bring a purchase and sale agreement to you at your next meeting. Our intention was to bring both of these agreements to you simultaneously. However, as negotiations have just prolonged, we felt necessary to make sure we had a commitment from the owners or the buyers of Block D. They're willing to move forward and want to move forward now and don't want to wait any longer for executing the agreement, which is why this is in front of you now, absent any agreement with the corner parcel. But you're right, it is contingent on the corner parcel. The buyer believes that that's essential in order for them to complete the type of development that they would like. A development between 30 and 45,000 square feet of retail, 13 to 15,000 square feet of which would be the specialty grocer, and the possibility of their housing on top of that as well.
So, are we cleaning up the contamination now, or is that?
We're not, because the contamination exists largely underneath the roadway that would be extended. Right now, what exists in the roadway's path is operating businesses. And so we have negotiated an agreement with the owner to purchase that property and to obtain, that also has a extended closing period of which allows us to obtain money from Department of Ecology, of which to utilize then to clean up the site underneath the roadway. So it has a number of contingencies on it as well, as does this agreement. They all need to work in parallel with each other in order to move this development forward, as this site has been plagued, unfortunately, with groundwater contamination from the former dry cleaner site, which we're proposing to purchase, that's under the roadway. And so in order for this site development, we need to purchase the contaminated site to perform its cleanup. In order for Main Street to get extended, we need to purchase the contaminated site. So it really is a linchpin of development.
So we've got to purchase that property, clean it out, clean up perchloroethylene, and then this agreement will start moving forward.
That's correct.
Okay.
And otherwise, none of the type of development that our downtown plan is envisioning would ever pencil for anyone else to do this other than local government. We're the only entity that has access to market funds, state environmental funds, for performing the cleanup activities. And so that's why we have structured the agreement in this way. That's why we would purchase the property, perform the cleanup, and then sell the property under in a three-party consent decree arrangement with Department of Ecology with Regency Centers. So they would be assured that Department of Ecology is satisfied and will not ask for any additional environmental cleanup beyond what the city has performed or beyond what the city is committed to perform long term. Because many times these sites, when you're performing cleanup, there's simply not a one-time cleanup. It's a cleanup initially, and then it's monitoring over many years and potentially adding additional chemicals or doing different treatment to reduce the contamination levels.
So could you explain a little more about the Main Street extension? So you said that they are going to do the frontage, obviously, on their side of their property, and then they're going to do the road bed and the other side of the street, unless I don't remember the name of that. The old Safeway site. If they go to construct first, then they would just do their frontage improvements. It's Shag now, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my pointer's not working, so that's correct. All the frontage improvements on the south side of Block D, which is this area here, this would be the responsibility of Regency Centers. Regency Centers is also responsible for, in one scenario, full street improvements of Main Street from Bothell Way or the Boulevard through 98th. See, a council member has his own pointer. Thank you. So all of these frontage improvements are the responsibility of Regency. Regency Center is also going to be building, in one scenario, if this development, which is the senior housing on top of retail, doesn't go first, they're going to be building all of this street, except the frontage improvements on this block area here, which is not part of the Shag development. This will come in at a later time, or the city can simply do those improvements on an interim basis. So does that address your question on Main Street?
Well, so would it end at the curb and gutter then? Or would it end at the road bed for, so let's say Shag doesn't move forward, what would it look like on the north end of the Main Street?
It won't right, it'll just do the roadway. It won't do any of the frontage improvements on this site, because those will simply get broken up and removed again during construction of this site.
Okay.
And so there's credits built in or increases built in depending upon which development goes first. And it's likely, given the scenario associated with this cleanup, and the expected development here, it's likely they'll actually construct their portion first. But we needed to build in those contingencies if that did not happen.
So one last question. Am I doing okay, Mayor, for board time?
Absolutely.
Okay. So in the agreement, the only thing I saw for certainty was the 15,000 square foot of specialty grocer.
Right.
It didn't say anything about the 35 to 40,000 square foot of retail. It didn't say anything about residential in the purchase and sale agreement. So how come that we don't have, I guess, a little more guarantee? Because maybe they just put that grocer in the middle and just make the whole thing a big parking lot. I mean, I guess they could, from the way I'm looking at the purchase and sale agreement. So I guess I'm a little concerned about that.
Well, we think we have our regulations are also governing anything on this lot. In order to anything on the boulevard, anything on Main Street has to be a minimum of 3 stories.
Oh, okay.
Unless you're at an anchor designation of 30,000 square feet or more of pedestrian activity spaces related to retail. So we didn't believe we needed to have any more regulations beyond what our code is already requiring.
Okay. All right, thank you. No questions.
Beyond simply the specialty grocer, we wanted to make sure that the main use on the site was a grocer.
Okay. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Everybody's had a chance to ask questions. You didn't go? All right. You go. And maybe make a motion after.
So, since we're talking about the grocer,
Yeah.
I know that you've said that we cannot disclose the identity of the grocer because that's the terms of the agreement. But people have asked me why the secrecy around that.
It was a negotiated agreement with the buyer. The buyer simply does not want to have his ability to negotiate a reasonable lease. I'm in contract with the grocer, with it known that there's only one that's been identified and agreed to by the city.
So in other words, if it was grocer number A and everybody in the community went, yay, that's the one we want, and that's the only one we want, then the buyer would have less bargaining power with that grocer.
Possibly.
Okay. So that's why there's
That's
secrecy
correct.
around
And the
it.
grocer that we have identified in the confidential document, if that were to be changed, that would require the city's consent.
All right. So I'm going to just go through some of the questions here.
Okay.
And some of them have already been asked. So regarding the agreement or the need to purchase what's termed the Northwest parcel. You said that your intention was to bring the two agreements to us simultaneously, the agreement to purchase the Northwest parcel along with this purchase. Do you have a time frame on when we might be able to get the agreement on the Northwest parcel? I mean, is it something that's imminent or?
Yes, I believe it's an imminent. It'll either happen by the next week, and at worst case scenario, the following week, or I'll be bringing in action for council consideration regarding condemnation of that parcel.
And so you said here in the answer that the agreement has been negotiated so far.
Yes.
If we were, has an actual purchase price been agreed upon?
Yes.
And so even if we were to to sell Lot D, the owner of the Northwest parcel wouldn't be able to say, well, we know you really have to you have to buy this from us. Therefore, if you want it that bad, pay a little more. Can they do that?
Well, I don't know what the owner might or may not say, but the price has been negotiated. The things that we have been negotiating over the last 3 months have been environmental indemnities and protections and had nothing to do with the purchase price.
Okay.
But yet, they always have everything to do with the purchase price.
Right. Okay. And then I'm interested in the road improvements for the Main Street extension and 98th Avenue. So can you point out on the map there what is the corner parcel?
Right here.
So it's that sort of trapezoidal
Yeah.
section right there.
In your packet, it may show up as a color version.
Okay. And when I was reading the purchase sale agreement,
This is the building right here, by the way.
it was my understanding that Regency in this PSA is agreeing to providing the frontage improvements to the property lot D, which
Correct. But they're also agreeing when they purchase this that they'll have the frontage improvement responsibility here, too.
okay, because I mean, I see that in the document it says at some later point the corner parcel will and lot D will be considered one and the same, but they clearly are going to pay for the Main Street extension improvements, obviously not the ones that SHAG is responsible for the entire length of the Main Street extension all the way to the corner of 98th.
Yes.
And
This is an exhibit in the development agreement where the infrastructure improvements are called out and their responsibility. This hash marks represents the Regency Center's requirements for the roadway. This is the frontage improvements that Regency is responsible for. This is a section that shows if SHAG were to develop or the opposite side were to go first. But Regency would perform all of this, and everything until you get to the section in here, which is the responsibility of neither the frontage improvements of neither the SHAG development or Regency. It's simply some property that hasn't yet been developed.
And then for the 98th improvements, they would be providing the improvements to the midline of the road from the Main Street extension down to 522.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then are we getting it when we are able to purchase the northwest parcel, do the boundary line adjustment to create the corner parcel? Are we going to be getting a cash price for the corner parcel? So are we selling that corner parcel for a cash price to Regency, or is there going to be some other form of compensation that, like, I think in maybe for the SHAG site, we traded some land for them to do the development?
No, that'll be additional cash that's provided.
Okay, additional cash.
Mr. Mayor, I make a point of order, and I apologize, Councilmember Sandberg, for interrupting, but our meeting does adjourn at 9 o'clock, so I'd move to extend us to 10 o'clock at this time.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Place your vote. The clerk can display. Passes. I'm going to change my vote. 5-1. And just keep in mind, we do have an entire agenda bill item after this, and I think the majority of the room is here actually for that topic. So let's maybe wrap up our questions and maybe look toward a motion.
And then, so there was some discussion about the Gateway Pavilion, and I noticed in the agreement, there's not language there. I guess I'm wondering if a Gateway Pavilion can cost upwards of $500,000, might that be money better spent on, additional road improvements within the Multi-Way Boulevard corridor? I mean, how wedded is this council to the idea of these $500,000 Gateway Pavilions? I don't believe they're a requirement in the downtown master plan.
Well, that's exactly why they're not in the purchase and sale agreement and development agreement this time. I think they are very expensive, and I think there's less expensive alternatives that we could select, and we want to have more discussions with the developer of this block and the developer of the opposite block on EF and G before we make those decisions.
I guess I would just pose for the rest of the council that we do have limited funds, and maybe not moving forward with the Gateway Pavilions with the idea of getting other road improvements might be a better course of action. And then
I would also say that I think the developer is supportive of a gateway feature, but it needs to be a gateway feature that's reasonable in price and something that they can support within their pro forma. And we just simply haven't had that discussion yet, because they're also waiting on determine what are the environmental issues that they have to pay for associated with the cleanup, whether it be vapor barriers, anything that the Department of Ecology may not be able to pay for, what will they have to pay for?
Okay. And then the final question is, I wrote you, what is going to be built there? And you wrote a question mark. And my question really wasn't meant to be flippant. It's kind of along the lines of what Councilmember Rayum brought forward, is that I'm looking at this site, and it is, as everybody has said, it's a very important piece to our downtown revitalization. I mean, it's right in the economic heart of downtown. It's immediately north of the park at Bothell Landing, and so there are expectations of people in the community about being able to access retail and services through downtown from the park. And the only thing that is provided for in this agreement is a 13,000 square foot specialty grocer. And so I'm looking at a site of over 100,000 square feet just on level 1 alone. And the only thing that we really know about it is that it's going to be providing this specialty grocer. And when I read the language in the agreement, it says that the city and the buyer will use commercially reasonable efforts to agree on a concept design plan. And that's not enough information for me. That's not enough assurance for me that we're going to achieve some of the vision that we have for that property. Yes, the downtown master plan requires, provides for a certain, number of height of stories fronting the multi-way boulevard versus fronting the Main Street extension. But we have undergone a lot of discussions on other parcels in the city where we've gotten a really clear idea about what it is that we're going to achieve on that site. And so my question to you is, do you feel that you can have conversations with Regency to get a better, some more detail on this concept design plan of what they propose there?
I've held discussions with Regency. They're not willing to disclose who their tenants are that they're working with. I would say that we've had as much discussion of the tenants and have actually included as much detail about the tenants outside of the McMenamins deal as we've had on any of the blocks that we've sold downtown. As you know, there must be retail on the boulevard. There must be retail on Main Street. And so that is certainly going to require more than 13,000 square feet. And the square footages that we're talking about for retail are between 30 and 45,000 square feet of retail. The specialty grocer is the key element, but there will certainly be other retail, whether it be restaurants or any number of other retail associated with either the boulevard or Main Street. The issue of prescribing certain types of retail or picking a specific tenant is that the market may or may not support that. And we've been really focused on wanting to make sure that a grocer was supported downtown because we believe the downtown needs that. Beyond that, we're confident that the market will then support other users as they choose to come to downtown. And I mean, these are not going to be users. They're going to be market rents. So it's going to be a user that's quality, that is able to sort of operate and do business long term. But getting more specific is going to be very difficult with any developer. And I think we've gotten that specific on this block as we have of any of the parcels that we have sold outside of the McMenamins, which was the entire 7 acres, utilizing those 4 buildings to be repurposed into a McMenamins establishment. We didn't get any more specific on Block L. We didn't get any more specific on Block K. And we're not getting any more specific in the LOI other than just generally describing the uses on Block O and N.
But we have in lots O and N, I mean, we have descriptions of retail. I'm not asking for who the tenants are, but I would like some assurance of what the retail square footage would be approximately beyond just a grocer. I would like to know what they're thinking about in terms of residential development. And then we did modify I think it was the Block K agreement to, for example, allow more residential square footage. So,
Member Sandberg, just
we
curious
have
how much longer you might want to take.
2 more minutes, please. We have had we've had a greater level of clarity on what some of these other developments are going to bring on a square footage basis beyond 13,000 square feet for a grocer, which I am in full support of, and not leaving it up to commercially reasonable efforts.
I think it's more than that, though, so I would respectfully disagree in that we have a code requirement that requires retail on these frontages. We have a code requirement that in order to build a single-story development, you have to at least have 30,000 square feet of retail activity. And in this case, we believe they're going to achieve that, but they'll likely achieve a calculation of closer to 40 or 45,000 square feet. And they're also looking at housing as a way to help their performance. Whether or not that actually materializes is something that they still need to investigate further.
Great. Would you like to make a motion? Councilmember Lamb.
I'd like to move the recommended action, Mr. Mayor.
We have a second. A motion and a second. Anybody like to speak to the motion? Councilmember Lamb.
So, we've heard a lot of conversation in our community about the council sort of reflecting the will of the community and listening to people in the community. And one of the things that I have heard for almost the entire time that I've been on the city council is people would love to see a specialty grocer in downtown. And I think they think it's important to have it in a walkable area and in a place where people can access it and have the ability to go out and have that really be the heart of our community, especially ever since Safeway closed. This is a really exciting opportunity for the city of Bothell. We, as a community, envisioned the realignment of State Route 522, which has enabled this purchase to happen. We've also envisioned, through the downtown master plan, what kind of quality of buildings we want, what kind of construction we want, and what the orientation of those buildings are. We have a really great form-based code that our staff, in particular, our director, Bill Weislogel, worked tirelessly on with the public to make sure that that reflected what Bothell will look like. I honestly can say I've been on the council for almost 12 years now, and this is one of the most exciting votes that we have ever had before us to put a major building block in here to clean up some really a bad legacy of kind of old Bothell, of this contamination that hurts our environment, to clean that up, to sell this property, and to get some of the tenants that we're going to have in this is exactly what the people of the city of Bothell have asked for and exactly what we're delivering tonight. So I would tip our hat to our staff, good work, and I'd tip our hat to our citizens for participating in the visioning process for our downtown and watching it come to life.
Great, thank you. Anyone else to the underlying motion? Councilmember Sandberg.
I'd like to make a motion to postpone this decision to a date certain. And then if I have the opportunity to speak to my motion, I'd like to.
I'll second her motion.
So I am completely in support of selling this property and bringing the specialty grocery to the city and to activating this block and using the opportunity to clean up contamination that exists nearby. But I would like to postpone this to for 2 weeks to our next public hearing, so our third meeting of the month, because the city manager has indicated that he feels that the purchase and sale agreement for the northwest parcel is imminent, and so I would like to have that, since the intention was to bring those forward simultaneously, I would like to take the opportunity for a council to hear those two purchase and sale agreements simultaneously. And I would also like to have potentially some further clarity on what will happen with the property beyond the specialty grocer. I think that if our codes are specific about what can happen on that property and what needs to happen on that property, I feel like it's just a small additional effort to provide some more clarity about what the vision is, stories, general mix of retail, residential, office, professional, some more general ideas, because all I'm seeing in the agreement is the one component. And I based on our experience with other purchase and sale agreements, I think that we can have a lot more clarity for that. And so this is not an intention this is not a motion to table or to kill this proposal. It's simply to get a little bit more information on what Regency has in mind, and to also have this agreement with for the Northwest parcel before us as well.
So your date certain was?
I believe it's March 17th.
March 17th. Anybody else like to speak to that?
So I won't be supporting the motion to extend. This is an agreement that's been negotiated and brought before us. I certainly understand that each one of us as council members up here have to make our individual best judgment based on what we see before us. Councilmember Sandberg was the only council member to vote against McMiniman's purchase and sale agreement, and she had reservations about that agreement as well, and she followed her conscience and voted against that agreement. I don't believe that an additional 2 to 3 weeks in this instance is going to do anything other than, if we go back and try to recut the deal, potentially alienate a good partner who would be bringing a needed end use to the city of Bothell that our citizens have been asking for years and years. So I will not be supporting the motion to extend.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Evans.
What I understand from the city manager, there's a property or a purchaser here that's ready to move on this particular property. He knows what the questions are with the northwest corner there. He knows what the codes are. We know that there's going to be retail on both of the streets there. I don't think he knows what that retail is going to be at this point, or what the market's going to be for what type of retail at, prior to development of this, or within the next year. He may not know what those retail shops, but it's going to be retail. And I think our staff has done a tremendous job negotiating this with all the issues and things, and I just can't see any reason to wait. Those other properties are going to come back to us. They're going to get done. But we've got a purchaser here that wants to move on this particular property. I'm confident, I'm comfortable in proceeding with this action tonight based on everything I've heard tonight and all the codes and things that are in place to cover this. I'm confident this is going to be a great development. We're going to have a grocery store and a lot of other nice development. We don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. I don't think the developer knows what that's going to be yet, but he knows what the code requires, and we'll get where that's what we're going to get. So I'm opposed to delaying this. I'd like to move forward with it tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Councilmember Ram.
So I seconded the motion to postpone, because I was curious to why, and I feel like some of the answers we got from the city manager are helpful to make me more comfortable. I did notice the same thing where it's just 13,000 square feet of this 1,000 square feet lot that we actually have some description of, but it looks like we have an additional thing put up on the screen here that explains that it's going to be together with complementary restaurants, retail shops, and other use permitted within the project. So I did see that too, but what does that mean? It would have been nice to have some concepts, that I didn't know other lots that we've seen come through have concepts attached to them, or we at least have an idea what it would look and feel like. But I'm comfortable moving forward. So
okay. So the motion made by Councilmember Sandberg was to postpone this to a date certain, which would be March 17th, was seconded by you, Councilmember Rayum. If everybody can place their vote. A yes vote would be to postpone. Fails 5-1. So we're back to the underlying motion. The motion was made by Councilmember Lamb, seconded by Councilmember Agnew, to authorize the city manager to execute the proposed purchase and sale agreement and the proposed development agreement for Block D with Regency Centers Acquisition LLC, all in substantially the same form as presented. Yes?
I just believe I still have the floor, so if I can speak to the main motion.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Well, at the risk of being crucified for this decision, as I was for the McMenamins decision, I am going to be voting no, not because I don't support the redevelopment of this block. I definitely support the redevelopment of this block. But as was the case with McMenamins, I asked for additional time for clarity to review the purchase and sale agreement in the McMenamins case, which wasn't a vote against McMenamins, but was an opportunity to get clarity. And as we learned later, there were some elements like the pool that we didn't fully understand in the purchase and sale agreement. And so my vote tonight is along those same lines, unforeseen, unintentional consequences. And I believe postponing for a date certain of 2 weeks to allow simultaneous consideration for the purchase and sale agreement for the parcel on which this sale depends on is not unreasonable. It's not asking for an indefinite postponement. So, yes, I'm voting my conscience. Yes, I'll probably be crucified for this decision as well. So be it. But I just want to state for the record, it's not because I oppose the development of this block. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody had the opportunity to speak to the motion? All right. Everybody can place their vote. The clerk can display. Passes 5-1 with Councilmember Spivey absent and excused, and Councilmember Sandberg in the negative. Thank you, City Manager. Go forth and prosper. Thank you for your leadership and good negotiating on the purchase and sale agreement. Thank you all who have been extremely patient this evening. We find ourselves at 9:12, and your stick-to-itiveness is appreciated. Next item on the agenda is AB 15025 to consider proposed plan and code amendments, which together compromise the 2015 docket, initiate a formal consideration as warranted, and status report on the 2015 periodic plan and code update. Mr. Gary Hassler is here with us.
Thank you.
And
Mr. Mayor, I had a point of information to the chair.
Okay.
Are we planning on allowing people to testify tonight?
It doesn't list it, and I did give people at the beginning the opportunity, but based upon the late hour, maybe people waited and didn't speak. Are those
I just felt like people have been incredibly patient through a really lengthy conversation, and if there were people who had been so patient and wanted to testify, and I hate to... I know Gary has also been patient and waiting, but I wanted, at least as a one council member, if people have sweated through 3 hours and 13 minutes of a council meeting and have shown up...
Absolutely open to it. Is anyone interested, just by a show of hands, like to speak tonight on this? Okay. So we'll have a presentation from Mr. Hassler, and then after that allow the public to come up to speak, and then we'll jump into council questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council, members of the public. This is the 2015 docket of Plan and Code amendments. And this is an annual council review of suggested Plan and Code amendments and related proposed actions. Each year, Council decides which items on the docket warrant formal initiation, and then a process path for each. And that path can be typically referred to the Planning Commission or other body for recommendation back to Council, or retained for direct Council consideration, and if initiated, the priority of the item if Council wishes to do that. The 2015 docket contains one third-party Plan and Code amendment request. That's from the University of Washington Bothell and Cascadia College. And then there are 6 staff-requested amendments. I will note that although the University of Washington Bothell Cascadia College presented a specific request to us. Staff is does agree with that request, and it's almost a joint presentation to Council. In addition, I have a brief status report on other pending plan and code amendments in your packet that were initiated as part of previous dockets, and the status of those. I believe there are 10. And as well, a brief status report on the ongoing 2015 periodic plan and code update for Council. And I believe you received a presentation on that at your retreat in February as well. Because of the late hour, I'm cutting my presentation keeping it fairly brief for you. But the one item that I do have a little bit more information for you on is the UW Bothell Cascadia College request, because it's the one third-party request. So that request would do several things. The main gist of the request would retire the current planned unit development that the campus operates under and adopt either a memorandum of understanding or interlocal agreement to address any obligations of both the institutions and the city that would be remaining from the existing PUD conditions of approval. That would be replaced with amending the downtown plan designation for 4 parcels within the downtown sub-area from General Downtown Corridor, or GDC, to campus. And it would also amend the downtown sub-area regulations to provide more definitive bulk and dimensional standards, plus other development standards such as parking and stormwater and so on, which are currently addressed through the PUD. There's currently no mechanism within the PUD regulations in BMC 1230 to retire the approved PUD. So if Council elects to initiate this request, staff requests that it include a process to explore code amendments to create such a mechanism. That would require amending BMC 1230 in some fashion. The planned unit development for the UW Bothell Cascadia College was approved in 1997, and at that time a PUD was required of such development. However, in 2004, the regulations requiring PUDs were amended to remove the fact that they are required, and they were made optional. For the institutions involved, a final PUD amendment is typically required every time improvements are considered for the campus, regardless of the scale. The campus operates under a master plan that was approved as part of a preliminary PUD, and then it has phased final PUDs for each time some improvements are proposed. Those amended final PUD phases can take anywhere from 4 to 6 or 7 months to process and require a hearing through the hearing examiner. And both staff and the institutions feel that such a process is now providing little value given that the current regulations, particularly in the downtown plan and regulations, cover the issues that were previously reviewed under planned unit development. So for that reason, staff recommends, and for each of these items, I've given you a slide that actually shows, I think, what a recommended motion would be for Council. Staff recommends that Council initiate 1, plan and code amendments concerning the UW Bothell Cascadia College planned unit development, including potential retirement of the existing PUD, and assign the amendments to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to the Council in 2015. And 2, development of an interlocal agreement or memorandum of understanding to address any obligations of the UW Bothell Cascadia College and the City remaining from the existing PUD conditions of approval. We would anticipate beginning work on this request, if initiated by Council, immediately following adoption of the periodic plan and code amendments at the end of June, and we believe that we can get them completed by the end of the year or very early in 2016. I know there are representatives from the UW Bothell Cascadia College here, from their engineering firm OTAC, and I believe they would like to address the Council if they are able to for a brief moment. Mayor, would you like me to work through each of these, or would you like to take each one in turn? I think in past years we've taken each one in turn so that you can ask questions of that specific amendment, hear from people who want to testify on the specific amendment.
Each one in turn would be
Thank you.
appreciated.
So with the Council's indulgence, if you're willing to hear from UW Bothell Cascadia College, I think they would like to speak to you briefly.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Good evening.
I'm Anna Kerman, Vice Chancellor for Administration and Planning, the University of Washington, Bothell. 18115 Campus Way, Northeast, Bothell, Washington. Tonight I represent both institutions, University of Washington, Bothell, and Cascadia College. And on behalf of both institutions, I would like to thank you for consideration of this request. We are very much excited about all the opportunities that present in Bothell, and we are very excited about all the development in downtown Bothell. We also looking toward continuing to strengthen our relationship with the city. As you probably are aware, we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We're coming into adulthood, and we're very much excited about that. Also, Cascadia College and us are celebrating our 15th anniversary of being co-located here in downtown Bothell. So with that, I would like to thank you again for your consideration and defer to our consultant, Nika Vanderhoost from OTAC, to speak to more technical details of the request. Thank you.
Hello, Nico.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Again, Nico Vanderhorst with OTAC. Address 11241 Willows Road, Northeast in Redmond. And I will try to be very brief tonight. Want to add just a few technical details to our docket request. And I want to let you know that we've been working very closely with staff. We've been working the last couple of months in detail on this application request. And as Mr. Hassler indicated, we really feel this is a partnership between the university, the campus, and the city of Bothell. For the University of Washington Bothell and Cascadia College, there are really three clear objectives for us for this docket request. First, to develop a more efficient, timely, and flexible system in collaboration with the City of Bothell to obtain permits and approvals for future campus development projects, of which we expect there to be many. Second, to acknowledge that the campus boundary is beginning to adjust due to off-campus acquisitions, and thus there's a need to create a more consistent process for approvals for development of any of the properties owned by the institution. And third, to create more integration with the City of Bothell regarding future development of the campus to support both the city and the institutions and to help strengthen the connections to downtown. With regard to the three items on the docket request, I want to just make a few comments. The first, in terms of retiring the PUD, there are a number of conditions that were part of that PUD originally. Most of those conditions have been satisfied. There's only about 10 conditions remaining, and we feel that those can effectively be captured with some other form of agreement along with code revisions. Second, in regard to the rezone of 4 additional parcels, the 4 parcels we're talking about are in this location. And for context, the entire campus is approximately 127 acres.
I don't have a
4
button. I'm not
parcels
pushing.
Make up about 9 acres. And this parcel is Husky Village. That's student housing right now. This parcel used to be the retirement home. It's now Husky Hall, and it's used primarily for faculty and staff for office space. And then at the end of last year, the university purchased this property. And so, as you can see, these parcels really become one with the bigger campus, and we would like to consider it as one unit. Lastly, the request to amend the campus district regulations. Again, there's a campus district already included in your comprehensive plan, and we think there's an opportunity to strengthen the language in that plan to take the place of the PUD. So thank you very much for your consideration. I'd be glad to answer any other questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Nico. Sorry. Councilmember Sandberg.
Does the university have any plans for the parcel that they recently purchased? Or what was the idea behind purchasing that?
This parcel here, there's no plans yet. The university has a master plan that's being updated, and as part of that master plan update, we'll look for different opportunities for that parcel. But there's nothing that's been identified. There was just an opportunity to purchase it that the university wanted to take advantage of to really be able to complete this triangle and maximize the opportunity in this location.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, folks? No? Gary? Oh, you do have a question?
For Gary.
Okay.
Gary, we've had the public, well, the neighborhood adjacent to the property that was just purchased on that map. They've had concerns in the past about a development that was trying to get off the ground there. Have there been any communications to that neighborhood about the plans for UW? Or I guess the question is, so there's no plan for that parcel now, but I guess that will be forthcoming out.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we actually need to let other public speak to this because we did let the applicant speak. So would you like to come up and speak on this matter? That's my guess. Is this the one that you want to speak about? You were the only one whose hand I saw go up.
Oh, okay. Well, then I should make it short and sweet, right? Do you need my name and address for the record?
Definitely need your name.
Jean Zorns, 18319, 108th Avenue Northeast.
Great.
And can I use this? I don't know what buttons to... I have the PUD here because it's been a point of interest for many, many years, as you can imagine. And so I took the map that you guys got, and initially when the PUD was written, it was to apply to the eastern half of the hill. And protections were put on it to protect the western half of the hill, which is residential and where I live. And the university has moved from being leasing space to buying investment property to now wanting to adjust their property lines. So now use it for personal use. So property's not an investment, it's now personal use like student housing. So the property line has moved from here to here. And I put a little highlight around our piece of property because now you'll see that it's flanked by, you know, we have 2 edges of our property are residential, 3 are not, or 2 are not, yeah. So we sit and look at it and go, are we going to come back before you and ask for rezoning because our property value as a residential home is tanked? There are parts that are being identified as not needing to be carried over from the PUD if it retires, and I like them. I like keeping the communication going open with the neighborhood. That has been very useful as the U has had projects that I've been able to communicate to the neighbors, things that are realistic about the campus to understand about what's going on the campus. Like they have to charge for parking. They can't, and explain that to neighbors. So I'm glad that the U has made that suggestion to keep that committee going. So my only other requests are 2. One is down here by the cemetery. There was a protection to keep that road closed. There's been in the past, as I understand it, Mass Transit has talked about opening that up to run buses up and down. Not a good idea. Through a cemetery, through a residential community. I would like, if you make changes on the PUD, keep that closed for just emergency vehicles. So I'd like that protection to remain. The other one is that on the old PUD, and my copy is 1999, there is a 30-foot buffer that's required along the western edge to protect the whole neighborhood. And I would love to see that. I mean, if you're not going to rezone my property so that, you know, it's not devalued, for across the street.
Jean, do you want your property rezoned? Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't, I love my house. My house was originally a Beardsley house. But it was just a little teeny teacher's house. But if
every window we look out of is going to have a tall building. Would you want that?
I'm asking you.
No, I'm saying what you structure for what goes across the street from us is going to affect about the livability of where we live.
What's the current zoning on your property?
Residential?
Do you know what
R
level?
something or another.
R something or I'm wondering if it's it's not R9600, is it?
I think that's it.
So it's interesting, as I recall, I've been up there a couple times with you in the community long time ago.
Right.
It almost seems like 8 years ago.
Yeah, at least that.
But isn't the road blocked just before it gets to your property?
Was, but the university has come in, and I maintained that path for students to go down to campus. University's come and cleared it out, and so now we have a great, lovely shot right up to the end of our street now.
Does that mean, as we look at the street, yours is the square on the left side of your picture. On the southeast corner, that's where the block was at one point, as I recall, correct?
On the southeast corner, okay. Yes.
Yes. So that's where cars cannot currently drive back and forth through there, can they?
Cars can drive all the way down to here.
Yes. Okay. Oh, that's to that point. Okay.
Well, no.
I thought it was short of it.
I misspoke. It only goes halfway down.
Okay. So it seems naturally that your property might be a good opportunity for a rezone, right?
It could. I mean, and the other thing that we've looked at is maybe doing a lot line adjustment because we've got a grate on the north side here. It's a slope with old big trees on it, and I sit there and I think, well, maybe if we did a lot line adjustment, those apartments are coming to the end of their shelf life. You know, maybe someone would want to buy a lot line adjusted piece of property that would become their buffer for their setback because it's already there and established. There's a retaining wall and everything. And then someone could build up closer.
I guess I'm just trying to get to the bottom of what you're asking this evening. Are you asking for a rezone with your property?
No, I'm not at that point.
Okay.
Right now I'm saying if you don't give us protections, we're going to have to ask that because we're going to end up with massive buildings around us.
Well,
and so,
when you have a transition between zonings, there's typically a buffer, right?
Right. Our thing is the buffer, the buffer like what you set up this summer for us. Remember we were talking about limiting parking, which I hope stays in place. You know, the U of Dub doesn't, override the zoning on what you guys put in place. For the properties on the cul-de-sac, they have a nice little setback. But right across, but for us, we're looking at the street.
Yeah.
So are you going to give us, and the PUD required a 30-foot buffer all the way along that, with their eastern edge, their western edge, our eastern edge. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this all had a 30-foot, has a 30-foot buffer. And so my request is if you retire the PUD, continue it on down to where it overlaps with homes.
Okay.
Because it's not, you don't have it in there right
Okay. So I think we got to your quest. Thank you so much, Jean. For
just protecting the cemetery access street and that buffer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Jean? Yep. Councilmember Evans. Okay, so I want to go back to the public. Anybody else on this matter itself? No? Okay, so let's go back to Gary. Questions from the public or comments from the public on this item are passed?
I have a question, just if I could. So, Gary, the process, the public review process or the public input process, how does that change with the PUD not in place anymore, and is that the same as it is for any of our other properties that are developed? That they're what would the piece I'm looking at, and I think this is next to Ms. Zorn's house, is the vacant piece up in at the top of your red or the hashed area there, and the what would that be? The southwest corner.
Yes,
I guess.
that's correct. So if I could respond to your question, Councilmember Evans, and perhaps respond to some of Ms. Zorn's comments at the same time. So some of the things that Ms. Zorn is speaking to, such as negotiating or protecting with a 30-foot buffer and not allowing cars to go down this street that's currently closed, those are the things that we would ask the Planning Commission and eventually Council to look at and write into the campus regulations that would replace the PUD. So we'd look at bulk and dimensional standards, what makes sense up against the residential areas, what makes sense in terms of buffers, if any, against residential areas. And then we would write those into a form-based code similar to you see in the downtown plan and regulations now. So that type of prescriptive form-based code would likely replace the PUD and not make the institution and city go back to the hearing examiner every time we want to talk about those things.
Hey, Bill? Good? Okay. I think we're ready to jump on to the next subject.
What? Gary, is the contemplation that we would take action on each of these items as we go through, or?
If I'm not mistaken, based on previous years, you need to make a motion on each item.
Okay, so I would move staff's recommendation on item number 1.
Which is initiate?
Yes. Which is to initiate planning code amendments concerning the UW-Bothell Cascadia College planned unit development, including potential retirement of the existing PUD, and assign the amendments to the Planning Commission for a hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to the Council in 2015. And 2, development of an interlocal agreement or memorandum of understanding to address any obligations of UB Cascadia Community College and the city remaining from the existing PUD conditions of approval.
Second.
I'll speak to the motion. I think that what Gary has just indicated is that a number of the this will have an opportunity for a full hearing and discussion in the Planning Commission, and I think a lot of the concerns that were raised in public comment can be addressed through that process, even before it comes back to the Council, and the Council will then have a robust opportunity to discuss and debate that. But I think it's appropriate given the maturation of the campus since the PUD and the evolution of the campus to take that approach.
Great, thank you. Other comments on the motion? Councilmember Sandberg.
I'd like to make an amending motion that we retain this with council.
I'll second it just to find out why.
Well, for one thing, when I look at our projected agenda and the sum total of all the things that Planning Commission is going to be looking at after the periodic plan amendment is completed in June 30th, our schedule looks more open than Planning Commission's schedule. And second of all, it's a review of a lot of agreements, and I just think that it might be a time-saving feature for the applicant, for the neighborhood, for city, for us to hear it here at council.
Andy, would you like to speak to your second?
No, I'm fine. I just wanted to know why she would want it to be heard by us
with
the Planning Commission.
With the indulgence of the chair, I'd like to ask staff if, I know somewhat unorthodox, but if they have an objection to that, to being retained by council.
Staff would have no objection to that at all.
Okay. I'll be supporting the amending motion.
Bill?
I guess that's certainly an alternative. Sometimes I think 2 looks at it are better than 1. And by going through the Planning Commission process, a lot of things get vetted at that point and answered and questions and that type of thing. And then when it comes back to the council, that there's, a lot of the work's done, but then we take a look at it from a different angle or something. And so I would be fine in leaving it with the Planning Commission if the majority of council feels like it's saving some time or the right decision. Either way is fine.
Great, thank you. Tom, any comments, questions? Or not? Great. So everybody's had a chance to speak. The amendment was to retain with council. Everybody could place their vote. Clerk can display. Fails, or passes, 5-1. So the underlying motion is amended. Anyone else like to make any amendments or speak to the underlying motion? All right, so the underlying motion has been amended that states the following. Staff recommends that council initiate plan and code amendments concerning the UW-Bothell Cascadia Community Planned Unit Development, including potential retirement of the existing PUD, and assign the amendments to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation. I changed that. Assign the amendments to the council for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back. Let me just take 30 seconds. All right, so it shall read, Staff recommends the council initiate plan and code amendments concerning the UW Bothell Cascadia planned unit development, including potential retirement of the existing PUD, and retain the amendments for hearing deliberation by the council in 2015 and develop an interlocal agreement or memorandum of understanding to address any obligations of the UWB, CC, and city from the remain or existing PUD conditions of approval. All in favor, if you could vote. And the clerk can display. Passes unanimously. Thank you for everyone on that matter. Item number 2, back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Mayor. The next request is a staff request, and on the staff requests, I've not put quite as much detail in these slides in the interest of saving time. You have more detailed information in your packet in the matrix for each of these, but what I've essentially done is just confine them to the proposal and the staff recommendation. This code amendment would be code amendments to clarify regulations concerning fish and wildlife habitat, stream habitat, within the critical areas regulations. The critical areas ordinance, 1404-900, talks about habitat but doesn't use the terms stream or water course, even though those are defined in the definitions in the critical areas. This has caused some confusion amongst applicants and staff at times, so we're proposing clarifying the regulations so that they read better. These aren't substantial changes, we don't believe. They're simply clarifying. So staff recommends the council initiate consideration of code amendments to BMC 1404-900 through 930 and or any applicable definitions in BMC 1404-005 as necessary to clarify the regulations and assign the amendments to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to council in 2016.
I would move the recommended action.
Let's give an opportunity. Is there anybody from the public like to speak on this matter? Okay. Councilmember Lamb.
I would move the recommended action.
Second. So we have a motion by Councilmember Lamb, or a motion by Councilmember Lamb, a second by Councilmember Agnew. Anybody wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. And the clerk can display. Passes unanimously. That was easier than last. Moving on.
The next item is proposed code amendments to allow the director to extend preliminary plat approvals beyond the currently permitted time allowance of 5, 7, or 10 years on a case-by-case basis. And to give you some background in this one, plat approvals were essentially a 5-year approval at one time, but during the recession, various acts by the legislature and the city itself created different periods of 5, 7, or 10 years for approvals depending on when they come in. That has still proven to be troublesome for some developers. We had a specific case called the Jimonka plat, and the applicant for that was here, but he couldn't stay late, unfortunately, so he's not here to testify for you. But he is currently running a daycare on the property and is not ready to proceed with the plat yet, and so staff is recommending that council look to initiate some process that would give the director the ability to extend already approved plats and short plats on a case-by-case basis for good cause. So the recommendation would be staff recommends that council initiate consideration of code amendments to give the director the authority to grant time extensions to approved preliminary plats on a case-by-case basis and assign the amendments to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to council in 2015 or 16. And because of the case that I just told you about, that expires in October of this year. We think if you initiate this, we can get this one done very quickly with the Planning Commission, probably a week or two. Mm-hmm. So we would recommend initiating it for 2015, and we would take it to Commission fairly quickly.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone from the public, sir? Are you waving goodbye or raising your hand? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to comment on this? No. Councilmember Sandberg.
Why are we so motivated to accommodate the Jimonka proposal?
Jimonka is one example. We think there may be other developers in similar situations out there, but that's the one that came to our notice.
And you said he's currently already operating a use on the property.
They're currently operating a daycare, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
But they went through the plat process and received an approval for platting the parcel. I'm not sure whether it's a financial issue for them that they're not ready to move forward with the plat yet, but they have a personal issue.
I can provide more background on that. Sorry, the Jamancas run an adult daycare on the property. They are planning to move that to another location in Kenmore. Through no fault of their own, the permitting process has dragged on, so they won't be able to have their facility relocated before their preliminary plat approval would expire. So this would give them a little additional time. But as Gary said, this is just one example, and these things seem to come up with regularity.
Clarification, we heard daycare, then adult daycare. My
Adult
understanding
daycare,
is the adult family home.
It's an adult family.
Adult
Perfect.
family home.
Yeah. So these people would need time to be able to move into a new place. And then you have to deal with the state and all that. So, Councilmember Evans?
The amendment says permitted time allowance of 5, 7, or 10 years on a case-by-case basis. I don't know why those particular numbers were chosen. What if somebody wanted to say 6 years or whatever? I mean, could we say permitted allowance up to 10 years on a case-by-case basis?
No, the 5, 7, or 10 years is what plats are currently approved
so there
for.
is a time requirement of that.
And it varies because it depends when they applied for the plat during the recession. So they're either good for 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. I'm not sure. Perhaps Bill knows how long the Jamancas is. I think it was a 5-year. Bill, is that correct?
7.
7. So their 7 years is up in October, but for other developers it may be a different time period. This would give the director the ability to extend for, say, 12 months or 6 months, depending on the situation, on a case-by-case basis.
Interesting. On another day, I'd like you to explain to me why there's not a 6, 8, or 9 year basis, but we can do that on another day.
Somewhere at some point.
I'm not sure I could answer that for you on any day.
Okay.
I would move staff's recommendation.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Sandberg?
I would have moved to not initiate because I believe the 5, 7, or 10 years is an adequate amount of time, and I'm not sure we want to create code language to accommodate every possible circumstance. I think that can be dangerous. So I guess the details will come out if it is considered further.
So, Councilmember Ram.
I just want to put a plug in that keep in mind that the stormwater regulations are on a different schedule, and there is a requirement in our MPDS municipal stormwater permit that I think you only have 5 years. So just keep that in mind, I guess, and I look forward to seeing this come back.
So other jurisdictions actually have this in place already, and they used it during the downturn actually somewhat to the benefit, because during the downturn a lot of jurisdictions reduced their planning and development staff and those folks that actually review plats. And so this allows plats to continue to go forward with when you don't have that staffing. By a stroke of a pen, that can be extended for a 12-month period when you don't have the staff to accommodate it. So I see it as something that many jurisdictions around us do, and something that City of Bothell certainly can do, and they still have to follow our code and what had been approved. So everybody has had a chance to speak, and I'll read the motion. Staff recommends that the council will initiate consideration of code amendments to give the director the authority to grant time extensions to approve preliminary plats on a case-by-case basis, and assign the amendments to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to the council in 2015 or 2016. The motion was made by Councilmember Lamb, seconded by Councilmember Agnew. Everybody can. 2015. Okay, 2015. Clerk and display. Passes 5-1. Number 4 is.
These are potential code amendments to address the issue of lead contamination in or from indoor gun ranges. There's been quite a bit of press recently on this issue centered around lead contamination. You have some information in your matrix, and I provided a web link for you to an article that ran in the Seattle Times on this issue. This initiation that we're requesting would be a little bit different. We're asking that staff recommends that council initiate exploration of code amendments to address the issue of lead contamination in or from indoor gun ranges, and assign the amendments to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to council in 2016. The reason we're requesting initiation of exploration of code amendments is we're not totally sure what the fix would be at this time, but we believe that it warrants looking at.
Great, thank you. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Mr. Challenger? Before you do we have a motion to extend? To what point?
10:20.
I'll let them. 10:25.
Second.
So, if all in favor, place your vote, and clerk can display. We're okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we're extended. Motion of 5-1. Councilmember Rayam is in the negative, and will be extended to 10:25. Mr. Challenger. Nice to see you, sir.
I guess you don't need my address again.
And your time is up.
You're done before you started.
I have an interest in this since I'm an NRA certified firearm instructor and firearm safety instructor, and I do most of my teaching at the Kenmore Range. The Kenmore Range is one of the country's topmost ranges. It services police and state safety people. We have had a lead problem for quite a few years and have made very vigorous and successful attempts to combat the lead, particularly in our indoor range. And we go to extraordinary lengths to keep people safe from lead contamination. We use obviously lead-based ammunition because it's cheaper than anything else. The range spends, 2 years ago we spent close to $100,000 on ammunition for our teaching, so you can tell we're a large range. I'm not speaking for the range, but personally as an instructor. And yes, lead is important, but many indoor ranges you go to have already addressed this problem. I can't think of any locally that have not addressed the lead issue because the state has been after them for it. But I would believe that most indoor ranges would be on the side of addressing this. And I would say that most of them already have, but the inquiry is welcome. I'm not quite sure what additional information you will get from it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always nice to hear from a real rocket scientist. Mr. Hassler, we are ready to ask questions. Anybody?
I would move the recommended staff's recommendation.
Second.
So, who's first? All right. Councilmember Sandberg, want to speak to the motion?
Sure. I'm supportive of the exploration, as Gary has said, because we don't really know what form any kind of amendments could take place. But I thought the article in the Seattle Times was very enlightening about there are problems with the Seattle Times article highlighted a particular local gun range. And when I read that story, I thought about the potential for gun ranges to be the environmental cleanup problem of the future, much like the cleanup problem that we're experiencing today with dry cleaners and gas stations and the like. And I want the city to be proactive in protecting itself from the potential liability of a cleanup down, in several years. And I think this would be a great opportunity to collaborate with the Kenmore Gun Range and have their input on this issue and other interested stakeholders.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, the motion made by Councilmember Lamb, seconded by Councilmember Sandberg, is staff recommendation that council initiate exploration of potential code amendments to address the issue of lead contamination in and from indoor shooting ranges, and assign the amendments to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to the council in 2016. Everybody can place their vote, and the clerk display. Passes unanimously. On to item number 5.
This item is an item that's on every annual docket, and it's termed miscellaneous housekeeping code amendments. Housekeeping code amendments are those that are proposed to correct inaccuracies or inconsistencies within regulations, and they do not typically have policy implications. And we have 2 such housekeeping code amendments proposed this year. The first has to do with public notice and mailing on public notices. The current code requires that an applicant provide us with an affidavit of mailing. That requirement has been in place for some time now, well over a decade, I believe, and has proven to be quite onerous and expensive for applicants and difficult to achieve at times. In fact, we've learned that the Bothell Post Office has some employees who know what an affidavit of mailing is and know how to process those for us, and others who don't. And outside of Bothell, most of the local post offices around us simply won't process them. So that's become an issue for our applicants. We believe that the same proof of mailing can be accomplished with a certificate of mailing, which is typically done in all post offices. So that's the first one. The second has to do with a simple reference change regarding disabled parking, and its code currently references the RCW and state health and safety regulations when it should correctly reference the IBC. So that's a simple reference correction.
Great, thank you. Anyone for the public to speak on this matter?
Move the recommended staff action.
Anybody wish to speak to the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. On to number 6.
The next item was actually before you in 2014 and was initiated, well, was not initiated by you at that time, but you did ask us to bring it back this year for consideration, a reconsideration for initiation. Council may recall that in 2013, I believe it was, there was a preschool in a residential area that was zoned 8400 that created a lot of controversy within the neighborhood while the development was being approved and then under construction, which is the reason the proposed code amendment came to you in 2014. However, that development has since been operating for some time now with no issues that we're aware of from a code compliance standpoint. So from the neighborhood standpoint, I think it's quieted down. Nevertheless, staff recommends that should council desire, they initiate consideration of the proposed code amendments and refer them to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to council in 2016.
Is that it, Gary?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Anybody wish to speak on this matter? No. Is there a motion or any discussion?
I'd move the recommended action.
We have a motion by Councilmember Sandberg and a second by Councilmember Evans. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. That passes. Item number 7.
The last item on the docket of initiated proposed planning code amendments has to do with another standing annual item, and that's the implementation of selected housing strategies via either code amendments or programs. A little bit of history for you. You did not initiate any housing-related code or plan amendments in 2012 or 13 due to limited staff resources and the heavy workload at the time. However, the 2015 periodic planning code update has completely revisited the housing element, and also the Planning Commission will be coming to you with a recommendation on accessory dwelling units that you initiated as part of last year's docket. However, now that the housing element has been amended and will be coming to you for approval, there's a need to revisit the housing strategy plan in 2016 to ensure that that's consistent with any changes to the housing element. So staff recommends the council initiate review of the housing strategy plan to ensure consistency with the housing element of the Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan, and refer the item to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to council in 2016.
Anyone for the public? No? Anyone from council? Questions? Any motions?
I'd move the recommended action.
Any discussion on the motion? The motion is staff recommends the council initiate review of the housing strategy plan to ensure consistency with the housing element of the Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan and refer the item to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to the council in 2016. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that passes. Gary, what's next?
Next in your packet I provided you, I don't have any slides for this, but I've provided for you in your packet a status update on previously initiated plan and code amendments that we haven't yet been able to complete. Some of them have been started. Some have not been started. They're in the work program waiting for staff resources or time. I'd be glad to field any questions you might have about any of those items.
Great, thank you. Anybody wish to ask questions? Councilmember Sandberg? No? You want somebody else to go first? Yeah. Anybody else? Questions?
I had one.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb.
Hey, Gary, on item number 7, which is code amendments to implement a vacant buildings registration inspection program, it says that that's not scheduled as time allows to come back in 2016. Is the thought that that's a lot of work, or it's pretty cumbersome, or what's the thought behind that?
I think the thought on that is that it involves not just planning, but also the building division and legal department as well. So trying to coordinate the resources of all three of those is creating a little bit more of an issue.
All right, thank you.
And then just a general question. So on any of these amendments, the council could take the direction to not initiate or to not consider further.
That's correct. You certainly could. You have that ability. These are all legislative issues, and they're before you on the docket. If you feel that you have a change of heart on any of these, you could certainly take a different action.
And then is the plan to also go through these one by one?
That was not the plan. The plan was to simply give you to put them in front of you in your packet so that you know where they're at in the work program or what the status on them is, and to field any questions if you had any questions about them. But you could certainly take additional action on them if you wish to.
Could I ask just a process question for either Gary or the mayor? We've now taken action, I think, on all the items that you requested guidance on tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we extended the meeting until 10:25. Mr. Mayor, am I correct that we have one additional item on tonight's agenda?
Right. We have fireworks to discuss.
Okay. I was just asking that for purpose of clarity.
Councilmember Evans.
And another question, since we have taken action on the 6th, will these come back to us at another council meeting for final adoption, or we've adopted them?
The items that you've initiated tonight?
Yes.
Yes, the ones that you've initiated that will go to the Planning Commission will do so and then come back to you with a recommendation from them. You retained one item directly, one item that I believe.
Right, but I mean, we're not going to see these first 6 items again until they go through the process.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Sandberg, do you have any more questions, or this was just an update from where we're at?
Well,
are we?
I don't have any more questions, but I would like to recommend that we not initiate or continue with the planning code amendments for the Wayne Golf Course clubhouse area.
So how did it get to where it was today?
So, as part of the 2015 periodic plan and code update, the Richards family came to Planning Commission and requested a proposed plan and zoning designation change to permit some sort of attached multifamily within the clubhouse area. That's the townhomes people have been referring to. The property is currently zoned for single-family dwellings at 4 units per acre. Because of the short time frame on the periodic plan and code update, and the fact that this issue became controversial very quickly, we knew that we wouldn't be able to deliberate that with the Planning Commission and have a recommendation to Council within the time frame of the plan update. So staff made a recommendation to defer that item along with 2 other items to sometime following adoption of the plan update, and Planning Commission took that action in February. Council could certainly take a different action if you choose to.
So I have a question for Gary. Is the action that Planning Commission has taken means that the council could not act this year on it in light of the fact that we're making an amendment anyways, even if the Planning Commission were to get it and make a recommendation? It's effectively no action could be taken by council until 2020.
Well, because we're adopting the periodic plan and code update in June, that would be our 1 per year update under GMA. There are some exceptions that you can make to that, but you have to make a case for them.
But those would be related to litigation or something that don't apply to this.
Emergencies, et cetera.
Right.
Correct.
So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, because of the Planning Commission's actions, that is delayed until 2016.
For all intents and purposes, yes.
Yeah.
What we anticipate on the 3 items what we were thinking on the 3 items that the Planning Commission deferred, sort of like the UW Bothell Cascadia College item that you just initiated, is that we would get to those. In fact, the Planning Commission asked us to bring those as soon as possible after adoption of the plan update, and we would probably be able to finish them this year and adopt them very early next year in January, likely. That was our thought.
I think whatever an individual thinks about the underlying planning request, I think council members have their own individual opinions. I don't think it's appropriate for us tonight, without any notice to the applicant, to say we're going to kill the request at 10:04 at night from the dais on a motion. That wasn't advertised. That's not part of the agenda, and I wouldn't support doing that. I think it's something that's going to come up. The Planning Commission will take it up in June, and I think that's the appropriate place to have that conversation.
Councilmember Evans.
So, Gary, if this stays as proposed, going back to the Planning Commission, and by, let's say even by the end of the year, the city has acquired that property, how then does this action be addressed? Or does it, at that point, would the property owner or the previous property owner withdraw this request, or there would be no reason to proceed with this if, in fact, the property was in our ownership and under other contracts?
Well, I think the potential acquisition is a moving part that the plan and code amendment request didn't necessarily anticipate. So that acquisition part may inform certainly the plan and code amendment request, and how that would change that, I'm not sure, but it certainly could change that in some fashion.
Well, and that's obviously the preferred outcome is that's what happens, and I guess I don't know if what action then would be needed here, but I appreciate what Councilmember Lamb said, that we don't know what's going to happen on that. So, I mean, they could say no go, no way, nothing, and I don't think it would be appropriate then to withdraw their request, or hopefully it's what happens is we own the property and it goes away. So I think it makes sense to leave it on the docket with the understanding that there's two tracks going down the road here. One track's hopefully way in front of the other one is the acquisition. So,
well, and the other legal distinction is that we didn't initiate this. This was something that was initiated by the applicant. If
That's
it was
correct.
something that we had initiated as a council, this council didn't say we want to rezone this property. If we had done that, it would be appropriate for this council to say we no longer want to rezone this property. This is this is an application by the property owner to the city, and I think it would be highly unusual and improper to say without any notice to that applicant, we're going to take an application that we didn't initiate and dismiss of it without notice to them. I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay. Do you have any other further updates this evening?
I have a brief update in your packet on the periodic planning code. We expect that to come to you in April with the Planning Commission recommendation. We are on track for that. The information on the other deferred items is in your packet also, so if you have any additional questions, I would be glad to field them, but that's all I had for you.
Great. Anybody else further questions on the rest of the packet? Councilmember Sandberg?
So about this, that this particular amendment was initiated by the property owner. I guess this is the conversation that we had earlier today, Gary, was that it just seems unusual that in 2014 we approved a docket list of 6 items. So this periodic plan update was one of them. Fitzgerald sub area was one of them. You know, and some things we didn't initiate. And so in this situation, we didn't formally initiate any of these property specific requests like we formally initiated the UW Bothell request. I mean, that's a property specific request. They went through an application. So we never really formally initiated these. We just did by process of saying we're going to do the periodic plan update. And then if we're going to look at sub areas, and then if anybody wants to make a proposal for their property within the sub area, they can do that. So I feel like that's an interesting application of the process, that in one instance we asked the UW Bothell to go through this formal docketing process and we vote to put it on there, but something like this is not. I don't know if you can speak to that. Is that
sure,
is that a process change that we want to keep in mind for the next time we go through a docketing process that includes a periodic plan update?
No, I'd be glad to. The periodic plan and code update is a little bit of a different process because that's state mandated and it happens every 8 years. And essentially the state is saying you need to look at your entire comprehensive plan and decide whether it's still applicable. And for us that includes, what we asked you to initiate was review of all the major plan elements as well as all of the sub-areas. That is the ideal time for people to come forward in that 8-year period and say, I think it's time to relook at my property designation and do it holistically as part of the entire plan update. We've historically done that with the major plan updates. On the in-between years, because we're not looking at the entire comprehensive plan, we have asked people to submit a formal docket request if they want to update their plan and have you initiate that. So I think that's the difference.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Comments on the update? No. Thank you very much, Gary. Really appreciate your diligent approach to the 6 items that we took motions on tonight. Thank you for the update to where we're at in the process. Next item on our agenda is actually the fireworks issue. This was brought to our attention by our city attorney, Joe Beck.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll be I hope, very brief on in regards to this issue. There is a bill currently alive in the House, House Bill 1702. There's also a companion bill, Senate Bill 5914, dealing with the preemption of fireworks, the authority to regulate fireworks in municipal and county government. This bill was sponsored by the fireworks industry, written by the fireworks industry, and through one way or another, sponsorship was obtained. Current sponsors, at least of the House bill, at least some of them are no longer enthusiastic, from my perspective, no longer enthusiastic about the bill, but it is moving forward in any event. What this bill would do, House Bill 1702, quite frankly, would turn 180 degrees the law as it currently sits. Currently, the state sets minimum standards for fireworks, and the state sets minimum standards for fireworks, and then we're allowed to regulate over and above those minimum standards. And for example, we have a setback from fueling stations that's wider than the state's minimum standards. Things that we've looked at over the years and said, for the safety of our citizens, we want to make sure we can do this and that a little differently than the state. For whatever reason, the fireworks industry doesn't want us to have any kind of say in it, and so this bill would completely turn that on its head and would take away our ability to regulate fireworks in any way other than time, place, time. Let me see. Let me just double check. It's time and days and hours of legal use of consumer fireworks, and the types of consumer fireworks that can be sold. So what we're asking is that you, by consensus or motion, either way, authorize the mayor to sign a letter opposing this bill in its current form, and so that we can send that to the representatives, the legislatures that are out there. We sent a letter through we've been working this, been down to, I personally have been down to testify in the, both the Senate and the House committees on this issue, as well as has our Fire Marshal Frank Shasky. And Frank has written a letter to Senator Moscoso and others, and Representative Moscoso requested that we suggested that we submit the letter under the mayor's signature. Obviously, before we go to that level, we need to the mayor needs to have council's consensus to do that. So that's what I'm here for tonight. I can answer questions, but we would like the council's consensus or a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a letter in opposition to this bill.
Thank you. And we actually, I know we extended it to 10:25. Our tape runs out in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to go back in the back hall while you folks discuss and treat each other well before I get back, will you? So feel free to ask questions.
Are you recusing yourself?
No, I'm checking in to see if we can.
Oh, okay.
Well, I would vote yes to send a letter under the mayor's signature opposing this legislation.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Sign it.
Thank you.
Right.
Done.
That's good enough. Thank you.
Hey, Joe, just a question for information. So would that legislation then preempt the ability of municipalities to ban fireworks as well? So would it overturn like pre-existing municipal bans?
Well, as it was originally written, arguably it would have.
Wow.
There have been some amendments since then, because we raised that issue. There have been some proposed amendments since then that looks like that might get, at least that might be taken out of it.
That's incredible. Wow.
But,
Okay.
but yes, arguably it would have overturned our ability to ban.
Okay, so apparently you all voted when I was gone?
Consensus voted.
Okay, so let the record show when you leave and whatever, it's a affirmative vote according to the protocol manual. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.